So I'm going live. Clicking the button.
All right.
All right. It says we're going live. We're live, probably. Okay, I think we're actually live now. YouTube's thing, it's always changing. So, couple things. One, since the Game Awards live stream, my live streams have started off unmonetized every time. Like, it was something about that one live stream threw everything off. So just a terrible thing. But on top of that, the thumbnail from like 3 weeks ago showed up in the preview for the first like 30 to 40 minutes that I had this scheduled. And that was like talking about our Game Awards expectations a few weeks beforehand. So people were probably seeing it like, what? But we're talking about stuff afterwards, like Sephiroth, for example, in Smash Brothers. But anyway, it's fine. It looks like we're live. For everyone watching, let me know if everything looks and sounds okay. For those new here, this is the Andres Restart podcast. We do it every Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. This time, we are, Brandon and I. Brandon's usually here as well. What about Nintendo? But we're joined by Shifty. He's back again. How you doing, buddy?
Always happy to be here, and I'm doing great. So excited about the recent Smash stuff. So I'm kind of always into just playing a ton of that game more than anything. My hours is ridiculous.
Of course.
I was actually just playing it before, last 35 minutes ago. It was, yeah. I'm a big fan of Sephiroth. He is. I like him more than Min and Steve, just to put it simply. But we're gonna be diving into that among a few other things. So the basic plan for tonight, we're gonna be talking about Sephiroth and Smash Bros. And how we feel about the character. We're also gonna be diving into, of course, speculation on the next DLC characters, the final 3. But we're also gonna be talking about Super Nintendo World, because we finally got a Nintendo Direct, an actual Nintendo Direct, talking about Super Nintendo World, showing off pieces of it. And that was pretty cool, so we're covering that as well. And also, there was this interview with Doug Bowser, the president of Nintendo of America, with Polygon, and basically talked about a whole bunch of things, kind of like non-news, sort of, but still things came up, such as what's going on past March 31st and what have you, and a Switch revision. So we're going to be talking about Switch Pro today as well, and basically, what's going on with Nintendo in 2021, because that's what we want to know. So that's the basic goal for tonight, and of course, if you guys have questions or comments below, we will address those as well. But please keep in mind, Shifty's channel and Brandon's channel, What About Nintendo, they are both linked in the description below, so check them out, watch their content, well, watch Shifty's content, but Brandon's been streaming lately, actually, as well, so
Yeah.
Check out his streams. Yeah, if you guys have anything to add to that, by all means do so.
No, I'll be streaming more this week, guys. I haven't been streaming. I didn't stream last week, but I'll be streaming more this week, hopefully.
Good.
Okay. Well, I recently did a stream. Technically it felt like 2 days ago, but it was actually yesterday. Just kind of talking about different gaming topics, whether it be Nintendo related or not. Just mostly just celebrate my birthday, because it was my birthday yesterday. So.
I didn't know. Happy birthday. Or happy belated birthday. How does it feel to be an old man?
I'm getting there. I'm definitely getting there.
I'm already there.
Not as well as you, Andres.
No. Actually, this is not because I'm old, okay, just for the record. But Brandon, when we were playing Fortnite yesterday, I was using this chair, and I was at a really awkward angle for how long we were playing, 3 or 4 hours?
We're playing for a while.
And basically, whatever I was sitting in, I knew it was awkward, but I thought it'd be fine. But I woke up this morning and I was not fine.
Yeah.
There's some weird muscle knot going on with my spinal cord. Not my spinal cord, my tailbone area, around near the spinal area, I guess. There's nothing structurally wrong, it's just muscle stuff. So I assume tomorrow I'll wake up and it'll be fine, but yeah, it's been uncomfortable. So... Yeah, it has nothing to do with me being old. Had I done it when I was 16, I still would feel the same way. Very uncomfortable.
Probably.
Yeah, I actually had more.
That's the reason.
Yeah, I hope so, right? I'll say that I actually had more back issues when I was in my teens. I used to do a lot of push-ups, like jumping push-ups and stuff, and I would get spasms. I don't get that anymore. So, I've gotten healthier as I've aged. I'll argue.
Nice.
Yeah.
Aged like a fine wine, I'd say.
Yeah, there you go. But
Make sure you keep it that way.
I drink my cranberry juice and eat my avocados, so I'll be fine.
You
I
do
hope.
eat your avocados. I saw.
I like avocados. Yeah, but let's check in with the chat here before we jump into the topics. House Cat, hello there. Dominator, good day. Solidus, hello. Ronnie Fazio, what's up, bro? Thomas Owen, yo, a premature Merry Christmas to you, man. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you as well, or Happy Holidays for everyone out there.
Yeah, because it will be Christmas. We'll have passed by the time the next podcast goes live.
That is true.
So yeah, guess we'll have to say Merry Christmas and all that good stuff.
Happy holidays to you all.
Yeah, happy holidays.
I hope it's not a Grinchy time for you. Yeah. But checking in the chat here. Javi Munoz, hi. Seahawks 24. You just got the notification. Cool. Discount link. You've been playing Breath of the Wild. Good. That's always a good game. Always. Solid. This last game you were playing was Doom 2016. I haven't finished it, but I probably should.
It's a good game.
Should.
Very good game.
Smashify.
I really like the boss fights in that one, actually.
I should probably get around to that. Smashify. Honestly, after how dark, mature, and somewhat scary Sephiroth's trailer was, I anticipate the trailer for Challenger Pack 9 being lighthearted, kid-friendly, and mild to balance it out. You could argue that's what Steve was, and Sephiroth was balancing out the cuteness of Steve's trailer. So we'll see what happens, but I expect variety. That much I feel confident in saying. But I mean, I guess that kind of just brings us to Sephiroth. We'll talk a little bit about Sephiroth, and then we'll jump into what's going on with the DLC. So, Shifty, you are the most experienced, best Smash player of the three of us. So I really want to hear your thoughts on this character so far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming you mean in terms of what the character can do, and like when you play the character.
Yeah, in terms of actual playing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, I think as of now, and I've been playing the character on and off for the last few days since he released. I think the character is going to be high tier, if not. I don't see him being any lower than high tier. Where in the high tier, I can't really say, because you got to test out certain characters, and it takes longer to really flesh out characters.
There's a lot to it there. It's not
right.
It's not like very clear cut usually.
Right.
And a lot of strategies coming up as people learn the character.
Right, like you have to wait for the meta for the character to develop, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of how he feels right now, he's definitely a character that has weaknesses and very blatant weaknesses, which is why I don't think he'll be top tier. However, the benefits he has is so good that I feel it's hard to argue that he'll be lower than high tier. For instance, I think his side special move where he puts the little dark circles around you is pretty much like, I think, his best move.
Okay, so you say that's his best move, but it's also his hardest move to land as a casual. I cannot get it to... I mean, I've gotten it a couple times, but I kind of have to, spam it. It's so hard to use. And usually when I get it, I just get, one orb, because I have to be really quick about it. I can't, charge it and get the 3 to 5. But once it's on there, it's awesome, because you know that attack is coming, so the enemy has to either A, shield, or you can find ways to sort of combo into that. But I guess I'm curious, how do you land that move, the side B?
Well, I think it's mostly because of one specific situation, but it's a situation that happens a lot in Smash Brothers, which is typically referred to as tech chasing. And for anyone who's not familiar with tech chasing, that basically just means if the character hits the floor at any point, they have to either land right there and get up, or they have to roll away in either direction, right?
Okay.
So usually that puts the character who isn't falling into the floor a advantage to read where they're gonna go. The good thing about that side B snap thing is that the range is long enough to read a whole roll. So if they roll into you, or if you space it correctly, stand still, 2 out of the 3 options gets them hit with that move fully charged. So it kind of forces them into a position where they have to pick one correct
And you do it
option.
after the roll is done, right?
Right, yeah. Because there's a certain amount of frames where they can't act yet while they're getting up. So it gives
And
you
I
a
guess
free...
if they stand, I'm assuming if they stand, it's a little bit faster for them to react as opposed to rolling, because they have to do the roll and then move, right? But like, I guess if they stand, you could just do a faster one instead of doing a fully charged one. Okay.
Right, because
Well,
you control when you
I'm taking notes now, so next time I'm like, all right, so when they come down, that's when I gotta go for it. Okay.
Right. So that's if wherever you gotta read, right? You gotta know if they're gonna go away from you, towards you,
To be
or
honest
just
with
neutral.
you, I never learned how to read. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, there's a reason I'm not good at Smash. It's because I have no idea what anybody's going to do next, and I can't tell.
I think that's just like a fighting game thing, right? Like if you play any kind of 1v1 game, you're gonna half of that fight is gonna be reliant on just like assuming you know what the guy's gonna do next, the enemy player.
I'll tell you that as a Pokemon player, where it's not fast paced, it's turn based. I do usually know exactly what's going to happen next with the other opponent. Like, as a casual, they'll probably think like I'm a psychic or something. It's like, no, I'm not a psychic. It's just if you play Pokemon like competitively, there's certain trends, and it's like this is what the logical step is to do next. So you can predict that. So I guess that's kind of how it is for fighting games once you get good at them.
Right, and I guess like you can make the argument that it's typically a 1v1 thing, right? Like it doesn't even have to be fighting games. Might even be shooters if it's a shooter that's 1v1, right?
Mm-hmm.
As long as you know or have a good amount of game knowledge, you can make a pretty good estimate as to what the next move will be and play accordingly to that move, right?
Okay. You gotta anticipate what's coming next. There you go.
Right. And because of how good that side B is for Sephiroth, you can cover a lot of options. And doing so puts them and forces them to block, to dodge, so you can take advantage of that defensive state they're going to be in and, play accordingly.
You know what I like about the side B thing? Because one of the obvious solutions to dealing with the side B once you get hit with it is to shield right before it hits you, to block it, right? But what's neat about that is that Sephiroth also has like that down smash attack that's supposed to be good at breaking shields, according to Sakurai. So the point is that, I guess it seems like Sephiroth is sort of built to breaking shields, and once a shield is broken, you can then take your time, charge up that massively powerful Giga Supernova Flare thing, and just obliterate them to Kingdom Come.
Right, and I think that's exactly how Sephiroth is mostly like designed to play like, because if you can force someone to shield, that means it's called pressure. You're pressuring them into doing something that they feel like they have to do.
Okay.
Right? So that's what that move does. It provides, I think, some of the best pressure that Smash can give a character. Because they know there's a timer. They know it's on them. They have to do something about it. So a lot of them like to shield. And if they shield, you can do the down smash. You can grab them. You can do a lot of things. If they're low percent, you grab them, get a combo off of it. If they're high percent, you break their shield and then kill them with the Giga Flare. It's just, you put a lot of pressure into them, and because you put so much pressure into them, they're gonna make mistakes.
Right.
So I think Sephiroth is really good for that. Like, he's really good for putting pressure on you and hopefully making you mess up. His weaknesses, he's after he does a move, he commits to that move, and he can't move. He can't move after doing certain attacks for a good while.
Okay.
So if you play relatively patiently, you block his moves, and then you go in and grab him, or you go in and hit him, most of the characters will be able to actually get a hit off of him.
As I've been playing with Sephiroth, what I've realized, like, the trend with my strategy is lose until the wing comes out, and then rely on the super armor smash attacks to get the job done.
I mean, if it works, like, if it works,
it's like,
there's no reason to stop doing it.
If I'm losing a fight before the wing, I'm like, all right, I'm losing, but if I can keep this close, when I get the wing, that little power boost will sort of make the difference in terms of me being slightly worse to being slightly better.
You come back, and you're like, that wasn't even my final form. I will show you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm definitely a fan of Sephiroth. He is my favorite character so far for Volume 2. Like, I liked the idea of Min Min, but in practice, it just didn't feel very natural. Like, I guess I would have had to have played with the character a lot for it to have become more of a natural fit. It was kind of awkward for me. And then for Steve, I mean, I'll be frank, I just didn't play with it enough, I guess.
Steve seemed very gimmicky.
It's not that I don't see value with either of those two characters. There's definitely something valuable to both of them. But Sephiroth just, I guess, one, he seems like he's a little bit more straightforward. At least with his basic moveset. Like, oh, he has a big sword. Kill things with a big sword. There you go. Like, so,
right.
I guess in that way you could argue he's a little bit closer to more of a traditional Smash character. Which is maybe why I like him more.
I think that makes sense, because Min Min definitely doesn't play as like a traditional character, because her specials are just the other arm. And and Steve in of himself is just a very complicated character. Like, he doesn't really play like a normal, I guess, run-of-the-mill Smash character. Sephiroth does play like a normal Smash character. He just has really good moves. That's the difference.
Yeah.
He just has a very good move pool to use in the game. So he's just a good character. Like, that's typically how...
He doesn't feel like any other particular character either. Like, he still feels unique, but there is a difference. Like Min has just different rules.
Right.
So it's interesting for sure, but I'm definitely really into this character.
Right. I think he's the most interesting. Like, in terms of actually playing the characters, it was fun with Min Min for maybe a week or so, because it was just so interesting how she worked.
Yeah, just to kind of see how it works exactly.
Yeah, and Steve is kind of like the same thing. I was just very interested, and seeing the combo potential with Steve was pretty fun. He does have really good combos if you learn how to do it, but that's the thing. He has a high skill ceiling, I think. Mm-hmm. Sephiroth doesn't really feel like he doesn't really demand as much of that. He's typically, like, if you know how to play your basic Smash character, you know how to play Sephiroth for the most part. You just gotta learn his moves and you're good. Yeah. I will say, though, in terms of the competitive scene, Min Min seems to have a very strong scene in Japan for some reason.
Really?
Yeah.
That's not what I expected from what I heard.
Right, because mind you, ever since online tournaments have been like the norm, and people can't really do like tournaments in person, we haven't really gotten like some of these characters don't have a meta that's, I guess, as flourished as others, considering that seems to be a big like roadblock. But when you look into Min Min specifically, you don't really see many top players in the US or the West in general playing Min Min. But for some reason, if you look at Japanese brackets, you'll see Min Min's like every once in a while in the top 8, top 16 or so. So it's an interesting thing. I haven't really looked into why that is. But Min Min is a character that seems to be relatively relevant in that scene in particular.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I'm curious how you feel about the challenge mode thing. I thought that was really cool that because technically Sephiroth hasn't had his official release yet until like the 22nd. Today's what, the 20th. So 2 days from now, Sephiroth is supposed to actually release. But obviously, if you have the Fires Pass, you probably already have Sephiroth, because they gave us a challenge mode, and if you beat the challenge, you get Sephiroth. I thought that was really cool. Like, I loved how it was almost like a little separate mode, and I was scared to try it on very hard. I still did, though. It took me like a half dozen tries, and I got it. I basically just spammed with Link, just used that as every projectile I could, and I got him down, and I got the character, and that was it. That's all she wrote.
Yeah, and I think if anyone follows me on Twitter, I kind of just tweeted my, I guess, entire, I don't want to call it like a timeline of sorts of when Sephiroth released. And
Sakurai is Sephiroth.
He's the next character. But yeah, like I basically just like went through it, and on my first attempt I went very hard because I was pretty confident that I can beat him. Like, it wasn't anything. I didn't think they were gonna make it actually difficult. That was the first thing that came to mind. I didn't think it would be actually difficult, and it took me 2 tries. I tried once with Captain Falcon, and then I switched to Palutena, and then just for fun I did it again with Cloud, because I thought it was fitting. I just thought it'd be a fun thing.
Did you do it?
And I like the idea of the mode a lot. I don't see them doing that again though. With the whole, release a character later, but then you can get them early if you beat them in this like special mode.
Yeah.
But I would love if that was the norm, because I think that's a lot of fun. It gives people an extra challenge to do.
Yeah.
I would
love it if they were to just do that challenge on a weekly basis. Like remember Mario Kart Wii? One of my favorite things about Mario Kart Wii is they had like a special like online event that like actually included content you cannot see anywhere else but that mode. Sometimes it included a boss or some sort of challenge on a track. It was like a unique thing that happened on a weekly basis from what I remember Mario Kart Wii. Now I'm not expecting them to add like new content literally for every single challenge in Smash Brothers, but it'd be really nice if they could just kind of come up with some sort of weird event battle that you couldn't do anywhere else, even with the Spirit challenges, just for like a weekly event in Smash Bros. Like they have that top left, they use it occasionally, like for something like this with Sephiroth. It would be really cool if they were to do that consistently though.
I think it'd be cool if they just kind of made that the norm to unlock DLC characters, because especially Smash Ultimate, right? Where when you first get the game, you have to unlock nearly every single character other than the first 8.
Sure.
Right.
We're kind of used to fighting these characters and then unlocking this character. The DLC characters, other than Sephiroth in this case, are the only ones that don't do that. You just get the character immediately, right? And I get why you paid for the character, you want to just get the character, right? But I also feel like I like this model of, okay, this character comes out maybe, I don't know, X amount of days later, but you can unlock them now if you beat them in this mode, kind of like how you would unlock all the other characters. I kind of like that. I feel like it's very fitting for Smash Brothers to have you to just fight the character.
Yeah, I want to be able to unlock the character. I agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
That
I
makes
was really
sense.
happy that they weren't all unlocked at the beginning. Even though it doesn't take that long to unlock all the characters, it was still interesting. It's like something to do.
Yeah, it kind of right. It kind of extends the life of the game too, instead of, especially when you consider like somebody who's hypothetically not someone who's been playing Smash for all these years, but someone who's new to the game. Right. You don't want them to be like blasted in the face with like 80 different names and images.
Way too overwhelmed.
Right, they wouldn't know who to start from. So it's like, yeah, like I think it makes a lot of sense to unlock the characters, whether it's Sephiroth just now or just maybe in the future for any other characters. I think that was just a really fun way to do it. I also do feel, maybe it's just because it's me and I look at it from a competitive standpoint, but I feel like it would be more fun if they had it much more difficult than it was. I feel like even on very hard, it wasn't really all that challenging.
Okay. Well,
and I feel that
I have an idea for you. All right, go on very hard again. Grab your controller with one hand. Don't touch the controller with your second hand, and try beating him then.
Yeah, play like Sakurai plays.
Does it count to say I beat it with Joy-Con drift?
No.
Maybe.
That's the closest I got.
No. My PS4 has basically Joy-Con drift. I've been playing all my games for the last year. Like I every time I look to buy the PS4 controller, I'm like, oh, it's $65. Well, PS4's. I haven't picked up a PS5 yet. I probably won't, but I keep telling myself, oh, I might. So why even buy a new controller? So it's just kind of like I'm in this weird sort
limbo
of
period. Keep putting it off.
You know what's worse than that is I had to beat all of Mario Odyssey with Joy-Con drift, and as a platformer, you really need very precise controls, which I did not have.
No.
Yeah.
Actually,
I once attempted to play Apex on a PS4 controller with drift, and that was a nightmare.
On the note of Apex, though, actually, Brad and I were playing Fortnite, right, as mentioned earlier, and we had this strategy. Actually, Brandon, I don't know if it was with you, but I mentioned to you at least, where we were at the Coliseum, high up on an edge, and I was like, I have a rift. We can teleport out if things go haywire. Trust me, I have it. Let's just hide up here until the storm comes in. And I'm like, at the top, I build like a little fort so I can kind of like peek over and try and shoot people while they're far away, because I'm all the way high up here, high up in the Coliseum. And I thought everything was fine. I was making sure I wouldn't get sniped. And then all of a sudden, I see my character plummet all the way down, and I die. And I'm like, oh, damn it, my controller drifted me off. I'm dead. That was it. I took a step forward because I forgot that my controller drifts sometimes, and I just walked off. And I was like, I'm sorry, the plan failed. But yeah, controller stick
fire.
drift is a terrible, terrible thing. So if you can
Yes.
get it fixed, please do so. But well, let's move a little forward with the discussion though. So Smash, right? We're talking about it now. But the speculation obviously now moves on to the next 3 characters, the final 3 characters. Who are those final 3 characters? And of course, once we reach the end, the big question will be, is that the end? I think it is. I guess if you guys still feel like it is the end after those 3 characters.
I would be very surprised if it was not the end.
I can go either way, honestly.
I'll say that it feels like he's really happy with making these characters, and I think Nintendo definitely benefits by having like these periodic Smash character reveals because, like, for example, it gives us something to do in December. They don't really have a big game for December, but they had that little Fire Emblem anniversary thing in the beginning, and then they had the Super Nintendo World Direct to get us kind of excited, and then they have Sephiroth and Smash Brothers. It's not a game, it's just one character, but it does kind of keep the conversation going. It keeps some spotlight on Nintendo, and it does keep some of us fans, interested in Smash Bros. Still using our Switches. So there is value in just having the Smash DLC. Could they continue? I think they could. Like, there's still a whole bunch of other characters that people want. It's just at some point you got to think that they would take a break, though.
Right. You gotta stop eventually. The only way I see them doing another pack for Smash Ultimate is if it's for like a Smash Ultimate Deluxe version for a Switch 2 or something. Because I'm not sure if they'll make a whole nother Smash game next gen. Because I don't know if they really need to, unless they just want to completely redo the engine again like they did between Smash Wii U and Smash Ultimate.
I'll tell you this.
They don't have to.
Smash Ultimate looks great, but all those CGI trailers look really great.
No,
Imagine
Smash Ultimate looks good for the Switch, but if you look at like other fighting games like Mortal Kombat 11, you're like, oh, maybe the models aren't that great on Smash.
Right. I mean, if you just look at Sephiroth, you can like the character looks fine, but he doesn't look like super detailed. The hair looks a little funky. Like, it would be interesting to see like a next generation Smash Bros. Game where there's clearly a lot of physics going on. There's a lot going on. There's like dynamic weather and the terrain, and there's particle effects everywhere. Like, there's some of that already, but not to the level that, for example, we see in that's simulated in those CGI trailers, for example. Like, it'd be really interesting to see a Smash Bros. Game like that. Would it impact the gameplay? No, not at all. It would just basically be the aesthetic. So it's not like a big need, but I would love to see that jump someday for Smash Brothers. But let's kind of go back to the character situation, though. I guess it does come down to if you think that there will be more after this. Because if you think there will be more after this, then maybe that impacts your thought process on how the end the Fires Pass, right? I'll say that, Brandon, I'm kind of more on your side here in thinking that once the pass is done, at some point they may want to have like a complete version, like a retail version that has all the DLC bundled in. And at that time, whenever that comes, I mean, depending on when it comes, if it comes out for Switch 2 3 years from now, then that's an opportunity to kind of include a little bit more extra content there. But otherwise, I just don't expect any more DLC beyond Fires Pass Volume 2.
I mean, I could see it from a perspective of what I expect from Nintendo, right? If I'm looking towards Nintendo as a company, I can see it ending here. But the other side of me that's kind of tugging me in the other direction of there possibly being another one is the fighting game fan of myself, where it's very common to get more than 2 seasons, more than 1 season in a fighting game. Now, Mortal Kombat, for instance, this is what I think they're on like the third. I think it's like the 3rd wave of characters. They had the Combat Pack 1, their Aftermath expansion, and then Combat Pack 2. Okay. Street Fighter 5, I think, is like 5 years later, and they're still coming out with characters. Now, the difference here is, does Nintendo look at that and say, oh, we can we can, benefit from doing a third season or a second season or a second Fighters Pass, third Fighters Pass. Clearly, they did see it to an extent. I think they did definitely see it to an extent because I don't think they would have done a second pass if that was the case, or even do a pass at all. Because remember, back in Smash for Wii U, we didn't have a pass. You just had to buy the characters by themselves, like individually.
Yeah.
So I think they did look at it to an extent, see how like other fighting games or other games of the genre have like approached DLC. So it depends. It's hard for me to say 100% confidence because the Nintendo side of me is saying they're not going to do it again. And then the other side of me, the fighting game side is saying it's common that happened.
Yeah. But I'll argue that, at least my impression, I should say, my impression is that, because I don't play or pay attention to other fighting games as much as you do, Shifty, so I'm curious on your perspective on this. But my impression is that with Smash Brothers and the creative process, the design process with these different characters in the DLC, there's a lot more work that goes into that than your typical DLC character for another regular fighting game. It's very involved. Sakurai is very involved, and while I know he loves what he does he want to do the same thing forever, like, or indefinitely? Like, after a certain point, I think he's going to want to move on from something else. And once Volume 2 is done, which will be I'm assuming by the end of 2021, that's going to be 3 years after the actual release for Smash Ultimate. So to support the game 3 years after its development, that's a lot, especially when you take into consideration that Smash Ultimate didn't come out that much longer after Smash for Wii U and 3DS. Like, if I'm not mistaken, they pretty much jumped into development for Smash Ultimate immediately after Smash Wii U and 3DS. Like, once they were done with, like, I think they probably already started the development for Smash Ultimate, like, even during the DLC process for Wii U and 3DS, if I'm not mistaken. So, Sakurai's kind of been, like, working on Smash Brothers for what it seems like it's gonna be like a decade straight, because like it took them years to make Smash Wii U and 3DS. Like, so let's say they started like in 2011, and there may be a specific date, I could be off by a year or two, but the point is, like, he's definitely been working on Smash Bros. Pretty much non-stop for almost 10 years. The man may want to take a break.
And I mean, if he decides to take a break, I think he's perfectly in his rights to do so, right? Like, he definitely deserves a break after the many stories we've heard about him sacrificing health in some cases to even work on the game by his own choice.
Yeah. But I'm curious when Kid Icarus Uprising came out, because I know he worked on that too.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Shifty. Continue.
Well, I was just saying that, like, I think he definitely does deserve a break. I'm just thinking that this is something that's kind of hard to gauge because it has a lot to do with what Sakurai wants to do and what Nintendo wants to do. And I don't know how much they're willing to keep supporting the game, right? Because we've seen them support other games. Like ARMS was in, I think, like a year they did, right? Something like that. Splatoon, it was a lot more than a year, but I don't remember exactly for how long it was.
Splatoon, they're still doing stuff.
Yeah,
still
like,
doing
not major stuff. They're not doing the Splatfest. They're not adding a whole bunch of
they have
content.
been having Splatfests. I think they confirmed there's going to be another Splatfest. I don't know. It's not still. I don't think it's over still. I think there's still going to be another Splatfest from what I know, or what I think is happening.
The point is that they do support the game, but the support that they have is very minimal at this point. It's not,
I will say they have supported it way longer than they initially promised. I think they've extended it like twice past when they said, yeah, we're stopping after this, then they kept going anyways. So, I mean, by that logic, yeah, they could totally do that with Smash as well. Because they kind of implied that they were going to stop.
I mean, they're going to support the game to some extent. Like, they're going to still, like, sort of manage the servers. They're still going to have occasional updates if a glitch pops up or something. But in terms of, like, adding legitimate, significant new content, like a new stage, a new character, things like that, I think seem like they'll probably be done once this Fighters Pass is over. Mainly just because it's been such a long time. But I'll also kind of play devil's advocate for my own point, because as we addressed earlier, the Smash DLC is a big deal in terms of, like, promotion for Nintendo, and it's huge, right? So it would be weird to see Nintendo not have that with them anymore. Like, it's almost like whenever they're going through a slow period, oh, let's just reveal a Smash character. We're good. Like, it's really helped them, especially during this year where there hasn't been that many big new games, at least internally from Nintendo. Having the Smash DLC is sort of helped things out a little bit. So it's going to be weird to see Nintendo not kind of have that in their back pocket anymore. So I wonder if, just like from that perspective, like there is reason to kind of like continue the DLC because they could always have that, and it's pretty much going to always make money. People are always going to be talking about it, so there's still value there. Smash Brothers has more legs than pretty much any other fighting game, so they could get away with it with a third Fighters Pass. I think. I just don't know if they want to do that though. Like it kind of comes down to that. Like the Sakurai want to continue, and if Sakurai doesn't want to continue, they're probably going to stop.
Right. I think that's the biggest if out of everything. I think it has very little to do with the work involved and anything like that. I feel it's 100% ideally tied to whether or not they want to, because Smash is the best-selling fighting game of all time, right? Even trumping Street Fighter 2, which is ridiculous for a lot of people in the FGC to even think about.
Yes.
But they got there because of all these characters, because the games are great. Everything between that. And I feel that when you have that kind of popularity, it's hard not to continue, right? It's hard not to make that argument to continue because they know that not only is it making Nintendo a bunch of money, it's always going to be talked about constantly. It's always trending in Twitter, like every time a character gets in. And to touch on an earlier point you made, Andres, about the amount of work it gets, I guess, required for every one of these guest characters coming to the DLC, is that maybe Soul Calibur, Mortal Kombat, Samurai Shodown, they're all fighting games that have guest characters. Tekken involved as well. Tekken, funny enough, has multiple characters that are from the same franchise that are also in Smash Bros. So it's like Smash does it more than any other game. That is obvious and clear. But if fighting games that are selling substantially lower, right? Not knocking on these games, they're great games, but they're selling substantially lower. Those companies are still finding ways to make these deals, to make these crossovers happen. I think it's not really work related necessarily as to whether or not Nintendo can do another pass, especially when you can mix in a couple of Nintendo characters themselves.
So my perspective was, when I brought that up, wasn't so much that Nintendo wouldn't see it as like something financially viable. It's more of a Sakurai is deeply involved with each of these characters and how they are designed. So, like, I don't see a scenario where he takes a back seat and they just kind of ask him questions occasionally while he's working on something else in terms of making new characters for this version of Smash Brothers. You know what I mean? Like, I just have a hard time thinking that Sakurai will be willing to take a back seat for Smash Ultimate. Maybe if he finishes Smash Ultimate and then the next Smash Bros. Game they decide to go with someone else, and maybe then he's just like a consultant then, sure. But for Smash Ultimate, I doubt he will step away. Like he wants to be involved with it. So my point is that how much longer is he going to want to invest all this time to just Smash Ultimate? You know what I mean? At some point he's going to want to stop, and I think once he decides to stop, that's when Smash is done in terms of getting new characters.
Right. And I think for that reason, and I agree with that, mind you, like I do agree that it is primarily tied to what Sakurai wants, and to an extent what Nintendo wants, because if Nintendo
Nintendo will pressure them, right? Like he's addressed it publicly. He's like, oh yeah, well Nintendo like really want me to do this, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. Right. Yeah.
So if Nintendo makes a compelling argument, he might still decide to continue.
And he does.
Hey,
it does
man,
like
they
he really
slammed
enjoys
some huge bags of money, and they were like, yeah, maybe you could, maybe, and he was like, yeah, I guess.
It's like, oh well,
right.
If I have to spend my life making Smash characters and I get paid millions of dollars, all right, my life is tough. I really wish I could develop other games, but hey, I'm loaded. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's his perspective. Hard to say.
That's a personal decision that we would have no idea how Sakurai would feel.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's why it's tough. So I don't know. I my impression though is that Fighters Pass Volume 2 is it. That's just my impression. But
Yeah.
let's kind of move on and just kind of talk a little bit about the characters, and then we'll talk about other Nintendo-related things. There's actually some things from Sakurai's presentation I want to get to, but I'll save that for a little bit later. So, the actual DLC itself. And once we talk about the DLC, guys, I'll get into the chat. I'll see what you guys are saying, okay? Who do you think the final 3 are? Like, do you guys have an idea of who they are? And obviously, we're probably wrong. Okay, like, whatever we say, it's probably a better bet to say, nope, something else. But who do you guys think is coming? There's one character that I'm like, this character kind of has to happen, and if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be confused. But besides that, the other 2 characters, I'm like, there's a lot of options. I'll just say it. I still think Rex and Pyra. Yeah, I still think Rex and Pyra are coming. To me, Rex and Pyra are basically a Min-Min situation. There is a lot of talk about an ARMS character and a Xenoblade 2 character getting into Smash Brothers, but Sakurai told us basically that they didn't come in because of time constraints. But with the DLC, that's no longer an element, and I think that's it. There's a desire there, and they will do it. And some of you may argue, "Oh, Rex and Pyra isn't really that hype." Is Byleth that hype? You know, so like I don't think that's a limitation. And one more thing.
I feel like I'd be annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. I'd be annoyed if Fire Emblem 3 Houses got a character, which came out afterwards, and ARMS, which only came out a few months before, got a character, and then Xenoblade didn't. That would actually be genuinely like, but why? That doesn't make any sense. I
would feel burned. Geno fans are burned right now, by the way. But I'm happy that we at least have the Mii costume there. So, I mean, it's something. But the other point I was going to bring up, though, is that what I've noticed, and you guys may agree with this, is that it looks like there's a little bit of a pattern here, maybe. All right, so technically, Fighters Pass Volume 1 started with Joker, but the first DLC character was Piranha Plant. So if you look at it, Fighters Pass Volume 1, including the bonus character, which isn't a part of it before that, was Piranha Plant, Nintendo character. Then third-party Joker, third-party Hero, third-party Banjo, third-party Terry. Close it out with Byleth. Fighters Pass Volume 2 has 6 characters. Start off with Min-Min, third-party Steve, third-party Sephiroth, third-party, I don't know, let's say Crash, third-party Rayman, and then close it out with a Nintendo character. Maybe Impa, maybe Rex and Pyra. Like, I that's what I'm kind of thinking right now. Like, I think we're going to end things with a Nintendo character. There's going to be 2 more third-party characters.
Seems fair.
I mean, I'm not saying they have to do the pattern. Go on.
They seem to want to focus on third parties. Because, I mean, as Sakurai said, he wants to bring as many universes into the fold as he put it. So, well, not exactly like that, but you know. So, I definitely think third party, it's going to be the main focus. But I'm hoping for another Nintendo character to end it off.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I think it's realistic to expect a Nintendo character somewhere in there, other than Min-Min anyways. As to who that would be, that's where it gets kind of interesting, right? I know you want Rex and Pyra more than anything.
Yeah.
For myself, I could see it. Because, again, when you mentioned the fact that ARMS came out before Xenoblade, it makes sense as to why Xenoblade 2 would get a character in there. I just don't know who else makes sense in terms of first-party Nintendo characters.
There's one more character that I'm like, that character kind of makes sense. It's Impa from Age of Calamity.
I could see that. I'd be a little... I don't know.
I'd be like somewhat upset. It's like, oh man, Impa just happened. What about our Rex and Pyra? But like, Zelda's obviously a bigger deal. Zelda's anniversary's coming up. Like, there's reason to do it from a marketing perspective, right? Yeah. So that would be the other character. Like, if it's not Rex and Pyra, Impa is that is the other character.
I would prefer, if it was Impa, I would prefer if it was not specifically the Age of Calamity one, but rather a generalized Impa that you can switch between the different iterations of her.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that way you can play as Age of Calamity, you can play as Skyward Sword, the others.
They could make it like a hero situation where it's just kind of like different skins,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah, I think if I saw that, then I'd be like, okay, I'm a little disappointed, but I like this. This is cool. This is a lot of fan service that I'm enjoying.
Yeah.
If it was just Age of Calamity Impa, I'd be just disappointed, I think, because
I'm not a huge fan of her design, to be honest. I just don't think it really fits Impa, Like, because it's very, very much the same as Pyra. And I feel like her personality and Impa's personality are so completely different that it's weird that they look almost exactly the same.
Right. And I get that. I think that's a big reason why. Because at that point, you might as well just say you added, I forgot her daughter's name.
Pyra, right? No.
No, that's
No.
Pyra.
Pyra's her sister.
Pyra,
yes.
Hey.
I think it's technically her granddaughter, but same difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, basically, it'd be like saying you just add Pyra, because it just looks almost identical. Like, well, no, it is more or less identical.
I'm pretty sure it's the
whimpers
same
in.
model. I'm pretty sure they took the model and then changed it slightly and then threw it in the game.
Yeah, it's like a modified model.
Yeah. I'm actually seeing some mention of potentially a Metroid character here. So I want to... Let me just quickly address the chat, because some points have been brought up and I want to get to it. Computer robots, guys, how come you guys don't think about Sakura and development team's health anymore, and all the good things must come to an end? Smash Ultimate DLC can't live on forever. Well, I mean, I don't know how much his health is actually impacted by this development. It seems like he's pretty healthy, but either way, we kind of already talked about that, though, that at some point, they're gonna have to stop. At some point. Ronnie Fazio, it all depends on Sakurai-san. I also think it's important to note that he may have an emotional reason to continue because Smash Ultimate was a final request to him from Iwata-san. And also an interesting point, he did feel compelled to do that. He is enjoying this, so he may not want to stop. That may be the case. Super Nintendoid. So yeah, Super Nintendoid. What is your most anticipated game of 2021? Probably Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah, easily.
Unless, like, the other game is maybe Prime 4, but that I don't think that's coming out 2021, so Breath of the Wild 2. Ronnie Fazio, I'm going into the mindset that Fire Pass 2 is it, but I'm remaining open just in case. I think that's a healthy perspective. But I'm seeing some talk here of a Metroid character. Major Blazer, the last DLC fighter will be someone new for Metroid Prime 4 to help market a game they spent a lot of money on. Dominator, Sylex will be pretty sick. Nintendosh, yeah, might be Metroid. So, like, I would have agreed with that opinion if we went, like, a while back, but now that we're kind of getting closer to the end, I don't see a Metroid character happening for Fire's Pass Volume 2, unless the final character is a Metroid character, but I just feel like it would be weird to ignore Xenoblade Chronicles 2 here. However, what would make sense is if they have a Fire's Pass Volume 3, and they follow this trend of, like, starting off a DLC, like, season with a Nintendo character and closing with a Nintendo character. What they could do is they could start things off with Impa, and then close it out with Sylex or what have you, because by that point, which would be, like, 2 years from now or more, Metro Prime 4 will probably be talked about. We'll probably know what Sylex is doing in the game to some extent, and at that point, it makes sense to, like, push that character if that happens. Right. So, and maybe there's been already conversation about that with Sylex, for example, right? I think last podcast I talked about how there's some missing spirits in Smash Bros. From the different hunters, but I was mistaken. Someone corrected me in the chat. I don't remember who, but not all the spirits from Metro Prime Hunters are in there. There's a few that are missing, but the most important one is one of the few that isn't in there, and that's Sylex. So maybe there is some conversation there about, like, maybe having Metroid involved. But that also may come down to Nintendo putting a big bag of money on Sakurai's desk and saying, hey, look, I know you're done with Fire Pass Volume 2, but we really want to market this Metroid character at the end, and we have a couple more third-party deals lined up. Are you down? Like, if Sakurai's like, you know what? I also am excited for Metroid Prime 4, and I would love to work on Sylex, and I'd also love to add Sora, or whatever is on the table, then maybe, he says yes. But that's kind of my perspective right now. Like, if Sylex ever happens, I think it's like a Volume 3 sort of thing. If that's even on the table. It may not be.
I can see that. However, I guess I want to ask a question, and that being, why do you feel that Silex in particular doesn't make as much sense as Rex or Pyra to end the pass?
Because Rex and Pyra is a known quantity. Metroid Prime 4 is probably not coming out next year. It may not even be revealed next year. I think we'll get like a gameplay reveal, but it may just be like a Breath of the Wild 2 like teaser, which may not even include Silex. Like, I think Silex is definitely going to be a big part of the story for Metroid Prime 4, based off the several teases we've seen for it at the end of Federation Force, at the end of Prime 3, based off interviews from Kensuke Tanabe. Like, Silex does seem like he's going to have a large role with the story there, but we may not even see this character until 2022. And we're definitely not going to be able to play as this character, or like play Prime 4 with this character involved until 2022, I'd say. So I just don't think he's going to be that relevant. That said, if you look at a situation like with Byleth, clearly they planned on introducing Byleth because they wanted, it was a deal, to get more conversation going for Three Houses. So maybe you could argue, because of all the money going into Metroid Prime 4, they want to get that marketing in there. That makes sense.
They also did just get a big Metroid character in the base roster, so
yeah, Ridley was
less
pushed.
Reason for them to add another one in DLC. Because Ridley was a huge character in the base
And we got
roster.
Dark Samus.
Yeah, and Dark Samus. We got two, both big representations of the Prime games. So.
But those were, I guess the thing is, I think, because the thing is, they actually wanted to reveal Metroid Prime 4 a long time ago. The game might have already been out already if they never restarted development. And I think at that time, the Ridley reveal and the Dark Samus reveal a bit more fresh. So they may have sort of used that to sort of lead into Metroid excitement and such, but it's been so long already, that's no longer a thing. So that may have been their plan initially, and since so much time has passed, that's no longer really an option. The only other character that I think makes sense to sort of push Metroid in Smash Bros. Would be Silex, but again, I don't really expect that because Prime 4 probably won't come out until 2022, and Silex may not even be a playable character in there. It may just be a character part of the story. And at least, so it would be weird to think that they would have this big sort of thing to sort of promote Metroid Prime 4 and it being Silex if the character's not even playable. At least with Byleth, the character is playable. You know what I mean? So, like I said, I'm not saying Silex isn't possible. I'm just saying, when you compare that situation to Rex and Pyra, where Sakurai already expressed interest in adding the character, and the game's been out for a few years already, and they're sort of in the same sort of situation as ARMS, I feel like that character is a lot more likely. It's really just a likelihood thing. It's not like I don't think Silex can't happen. It's just I had to bet I would pick Rex and Pyra over Silex for making it into this Fighter's Pass.
Right. Okay. I see what you mean then. Because my mindset was in the idea that this second Fighter's Pass is apparently going to span out longer than I think it was originally said. Oh, not originally said, but rather what people remember. I think it was supposed to be ending early 2020?
I think.
Yeah, but at this rate, I think it
yeah.
I think they might be finished by the end of 2021. We didn't expect Sephiroth to come out this soon. That was a quick turnaround.
Yeah, they only have 3 characters released next year.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I could see it then, if that's the case.
The other thing is, Rex and Pyra was specifically mentioned by Sakurai as a character they wanted in the game, but couldn't get in the base roster due to time constraints. So it'd be weird if they didn't look at them and be like, oh, DLC, here's our chance to do what we already wanted to do.
Now, the argument to be made, though, is that they made Rex as a Mii costume, and you could argue that, he's playable to some extent, so let's just focus on someone else. I don't believe Mii costumes are deconfirmations, but I do think that there is some reason to think that if they do a Mii costume, then maybe they wouldn't do a playable character. But also, this is a base game thing as opposed to a DLC thing, so it's a little different. Kind of like the Spirit argument, for example. If they have a Spirit event for the DLC, then they're probably not planning a playable character of the same Spirit in the same DLC pack. But with Min Min, she was a Spirit in Smash Ultimate in the base game, but she was still added as a DLC character.
Right. and I got confirmation. I was vindicated. My video that got so much hate about how spirits probably don't deconfirm characters. I've been vindicated.
You had your moment, Brandon.
I did.
To wait a while, but you got it.
All the haters had to take the L.
Yeah.
Honestly, my mind feels like I don't know. I have a hard time seeing. Not okay. This sounds. I'm wording it wrong. I was gonna say I don't see Rex and Pyra happening, but that's not necessarily the case. I think it's possible they can happen, and I just don't know how likely it is that he'll go back and not redo it, but rather actually make the character that he was thinking of years prior. I think Sakurai, in my personal interpretation of the person, because obviously I've never met Sakurai, right? I believe he's somebody who typically always likes to look forward, right? Like he feels like somebody who doesn't necessarily look backward at something he just did to do it because he has the opportunity now.
Sure, but let me ask you this: why did they go back to the ARMS character?
And
I feel like
they did say that Minecraft Steve has been in the works since the Wii U game. Like they were in talks to do DLC for the Wii U version, and they've had that idea for that long.
Yeah, but that's not something. Okay, like the Minecraft Steve thing specifically, I don't see as something that stopped and then restarted again after like years later. That was something that was constantly talks like the entire time, right? So I don't really see that as like necessarily comparable. The Min thing is more comparable though. However, I feel like the reason why that's different is because that is something that, like Brandon said, spirits don't deconfirm, right? So I feel like spirits never really had that kind of power in Sakurai's mind, while I feel like Sakurai made the Mii outfit for Rex as a sort of like consolidation prize almost, or like a some to like, you know, like, oh hey, we're sorry we didn't do it, so here's this instead. Now we're gonna move on and do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Violet didn't get anything like that. Min didn't get anything like that. I guess you could say a spirit technically counts, but again, we kind of know that spirits don't do that now.
Sure.
Now they could easily prove that Mii outfits don't do that either, right? With Rex and Pyra, which make speculation way better, right? It will make we got a much better understanding at that point.
People will be like, oh, Geno can still happen.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but it's just from what I can see from here, it looks like he likes to move forward unless it's something that, you know, he likes to move forward unless it was something that was like in talks for like the longest time, or maybe it could also be in the sense of like Nintendo pushing it.
Yeah,
because Minecraft Steve was clearly pushed by Nintendo.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I also think like the same reason that they went and did an ARMS character, like there could be, and the same reason they did a Fire Emblem character, like it could be the case of like, hey, look, let's try to get this character in there. We want to boost this franchise a little bit more. Mollisoft they did the Definitive Edition last year, but that was just a remaster, right? They have several different studios. There's a good chance a Mollisoft game, maybe Xenoblade 3 or another one, isn't far off. Like, so it may still make sense to kind of push a Xenoblade character to kind of market that franchise a little bit more, especially next year. So, you know, I think there's still reason to maybe do it. But I also understand your point. Like, maybe that was hit, because you're right, they didn't do like a specific Min Mii costume, but they did have Mii costumes of the ARMS characters. However, I did see Ronnie Fazio bringing up an interesting point. I'm going to read what he said here. I personally don't think the Mii costume itself hurts Rex's chances. However, the fact it's locked behind buying the first pass does a little bit. And I think that isn't actually a really good point, because I forgot about that. I guess when we bought Firestars Volume 1, he was kind of like a bonus thing when you got that. So that does change things a little bit. That I think that is a good point. So it could be the case that you're right, and Rex is just a consolation prize. But I'll also say that the concept of a Rex and Pyra, it's not like just Rex, another anime sword fighter. It's the idea of sort of taking the mechanics we saw in Xenoblade 2 and sort of making that into an interesting, unique character. So there's that. But at the same time, it would be two characters in one, and maybe Sakurai may look at that possibility and be like, oh, this is going to be something that's going to be very hard to do and make it work. So he may decide to do something else instead, because that is also considered as well if it's technically possible, right? We had a video I made a video talking about like different Smash characters that have sort of broken fan rules, and we sort of opened things up talking about Ridley. And back on Wii U and 3DS, like making Ridley work as a playable character at the time, Sakurai decided it would be too challenging to make it work and honor the character fairly. So that same thinking could go into why Rex might not happen, even if it's like in talks right now, because he may think, oh, it would make most sense to have him be like a combo character using another blade, but that would require two characters doing things in conjunction together, in unison together, and that can create a whole slew of technical issues. While it may not be impossible, it's very challenging, and he may not think it's reasonable to kind of go ahead and do that. Instead of, they may just decide to focus on something else instead, especially since they already did add the Mii costing there.
Right. And I will say, going into what you started with, in terms of moveset potential for a character, I'm always been someone who says, I really don't care if I like the character, like conceptually, like not conceptually, but rather like the franchise they're from. Right. I could be a character I've never heard of, but if the moveset potential is fun, like cool for whatever reason, like combo potential, anything, I'll love the character. You know, like I'll have a lot of fun with the character, right? For instance, Terry Bogard, right? I played a few SNK games. I played Fatal Fury, and I played Garo Mark with the Wolves. But other than that, I haven't really played that much from SNK. And yeah, he's probably one of my favorite characters to play, right? From the first pass. Now, going into whether or not like it's, I guess like if Sakurai would see it as feasible to do Rex and Pyra, I think Smash 4 Sakurai would probably say that, but I don't think Ultimate Sakurai would say that.
Ultimate Sakurai's on another level.
Yeah, because he reminder that he redid every stage in the game for Steve, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think workload, or not workload, but rather like, I guess technical feasibility, I don't know what the phrase would be, is something that would necessarily stop him if he wanted Rex in, right? I feel if he wanted Rex in, he can make it work, especially when you consider that characters like Rosalina and characters like Ice Climbers already kind of have a duo partnership kind of mechanic to them.
Right.
So they already have something there, right? Like you can consider those building blocks to the kind of idea that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So
and blades are typically more support, so they don't even necessarily need to be like, they could be like the Pokemon trainer for the most part and just be in the background and then come in for certain moves.
Yeah, I see like they'd be on the stage
Smash,
though and not in the background, because that'd be weird to kind of jump back and forth. Like it would be like a tether. But I mean, still, you're right. They do have those combo characters already. But I'm simply stating that it's a possible reason why Rex and Pyra wouldn't necessarily happen. But let's move on a little bit. We've been talking about like potential Nintendo characters, and there's definitely a lot of possibilities there. We've been sort of assuming that it's just one character. Like right now, that's kind of my perspective, but that's something that sort of evolves and changes, right? Like they could still finish out the entire pass with just Nintendo characters. Maybe we get Impa, Silex, and Rex and Pyra to close things out. Like that's not impossible, right? We could get all three of those characters. But I would expect to see at least another third-party character, and I'm actually sort of thinking two more. But I guess that my point is, like, we don't really know how many Nintendo characters there will be, how many third-party characters there will be. Like, even though the pattern, it's not even a pattern, just the first 6 DLC characters, it was 1 Nintendo, 4 third-party, 1 Nintendo. That doesn't mean they're going to have a sandwich again of Nintendo being the bread and third-party characters being the meat and cheese, right? Like, that's not necessarily going to be the case. That's just what it looks like right now. So I don't know. Right. There may not even be another Nintendo character. I think there will be at least one more, but I'm not sure. Point is, I guess I just want us to sort of transition into talking about third-party characters, unless you have anything to add on that idea right there.
Only thing I could think of is the most exciting Nintendo character I could see in the past is if they coincide with Breath of the Wild 2 and give us Ganon, or at least that particular version of him. That'd be interesting. Yeah. And again, how do you make that work with the other Ganon, I guess?
Yeah.
So, but I think it'd be cool. But I mean, hey,
it would be really cool for sure. I don't think it's likely, just because there is already an existing Ganondorf. But it would be really cool. I mean, I'll also say though that since you bring up Breath of the Wild Ganondorf, if Breath of the Wild Ganondorf is possible, so is Breath of the Wild Zelda.
Right.
And she has amazing goddess powers, so, you know, that's an option. But I would say because there's already a Ganondorf and a Zelda, I kind of agree. It's not super likely, but definitely would be really, really cool.
Right. But other than that, I don't really know what Nintendo first-party character that I can see be possible that would be exciting to me, but who knows? I could be surprised.
Man, once you see that Rex and Pyra gameplay trailer, you're like, oh my god, the combos, the combinations. Oh, this is really cool how they linked up that mechanic from Xenoblade 2 into Smash Bros. Oh, it blows my mind. Like, just you wait. It's gonna happen. I hope. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I'll just specifically ask you guys, like, do you guys agree that it's going to be just one more Nintendo character, or do you think the ratio is going to be a little different?
Honestly, I think it's just one more.
I think it can vary. It could be any combination of first party and third party. Because I think noticing patterns is something fans do, but not necessarily companies plan.
Yeah. I agree with that. I don't know. It's weird, but I mean, we'll
I
see.
just have a gut feeling that it's just gonna be 2 more third parties and then end off with a Nintendo character.
Like, it may not be so much that they think, oh, let's sandwich everything because that's fun. It may just be more like they want to sort of appetize the Nintendo fan base by starting off with a Nintendo character and then closing things out because, like, oh yeah, we still had this other thing because it's kind of more of like appealing to that core fan base by still putting those characters in there in the beginning and end, but to kind of keep people excited all throughout, bringing in new fans, you show off all these third-party characters. Which I guess brings us to the next sort of speculation point. What would be those third-party characters? The 2 that come to mind to me that I would love to see are Crash Bandicoot and Rayman. Just because I care about the characters, not because I see like necessarily like a really cool moveset potential there.
Right. So those are characters you want rather than expect.
I think they're both likely because they're both like big third-party characters from respective franchises that I think are deserving of being in Smash Brothers. Like, I think they would fit, but there's other characters that also would fit too. So, you know.
Right. I guess my question was more so of, is it more of want than it is expectation, or is it like a combination of both? But I guess that's what it is.
It's a combination of both. Like, I want them, but they're like 2 out of like a few dozen options. Right.
I get that.
So many options. It's hard for me to say, like, oh, I think this character is likely, because I feel like just looking at what the characters we've already gotten, most of them we would have never said were likely at all. So it's really hard
Sephiroth
to
is
guess.
Crazy because they revisited Final Fantasy VII and they brought in the antagonist to that series in there. Final Fantasy, like, there is technically Final Fantasy VII on the Switch, like the old version, but do any of us expect 7 Remake to come to Switch? I don't think so.
No.
I mean, I could see it come to other platforms, but not Switch.
Yeah, I don't expect it either.
Yeah. In terms of what's expected, that's the most difficult thing, right? Because you could expect any combination of characters, and they're probably likely. Right, considering what Brandon said, these characters have come out of nowhere, like Sephiroth, like I mean, certain characters we kind of technically knew about, like Steve to an extent, right?
Yeah,
like it was mentioned.
Yeah, but we gave up on thinking it was going to happen.
We didn't expect to get both Banjo and Steve. We expected one or the other.
Once we got Banjo, we gave up on Steve. Exactly. Did any? I don't know of anyone that thought Sephiroth was happening. I don't know anyone.
Right. I didn't hear anything on that.
I have a question for you, Shifty, because I know, like, a while ago, you know, there was the whole Ryu Hayabusa talk. Do you still feel like that's in the like? I think it has to be in the cards, but do you think he's still perhaps a cut above the other potential options, or do you think he's just one of the many options?
I think it's hard to say because that was a while ago when I first heard it. But I think what probably happened was that they were in talks, right? Ryu mentioned in some capacity or another, and was at one point considered like a confident thing, right? Like that was a thing that was going to happen. Like everyone that was like on the inside was saying, "Oh, this is gonna happen. This character's gonna happen." This character's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then we just didn't see that character, right? So I think it's possible that we'll still see him. Though I can't, in confidence, say like how likely. Because there was a point in time I was very confident with it, and then it ended up not being the case. So when it comes to DLC, I think DLC is much harder to pinpoint than it is base roster. Because base roster, I was able to leak like a few things here and there. But when it comes to DLC, that's apparently much tougher.
I think they've tightened up. Like, there were some leaks for Fire's Pass Volume 1. Terry was leaked like a day or two in advance. Hero was leaked like months in advance. I'll say that I knew about Banjo before it was happening, but I still didn't believe it until I saw it.
Right. And mind you, there's a good amount of history with each of those. Like, Terry was leaked day prior. Random. That wasn't even like a leaker thing. That was just Nintendo. I think some kind of Nintendo website or like.
It was the SNK thing. Yeah.
Like it was basically leaked by themselves. And then when it comes to who was it? Steve. Steve was mentioned a long time ago, and took only till recently to actually get into the game. And then when you go to say Hero, again, timing is difficult, right? Steve happened way later. When Hero was first mentioned, it was originally supposed to be a Square Enix rep that was going to be in the base roster. Did not end up being base roster, ended up being DLC. So timing specifically seems to be something that is very, very difficult when it comes to the DLC characters, right?
Yeah.
We've seen leakers get the right day and date, but when it comes to DLC, we've seen them get characters right, but happen way later than expected.
Yeah, and I'll also say Go on, Brandon.
I'll say this: when we got Terry was right around when we were thinking, Ryu Hayabusa, and that announcement of Terry, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that when they announced that there was going to be a second Fighter's Pass, which means at that time they would have been heavily in the talks about which characters, because they already decided very early on which characters were going to be in. They might have been that they were on that leak came from them talking about Fighters Pass 2, and we thought it was about the original Fighters Pass.
Maybe.
It's possible.
Maybe. And I'll say that at one point there was a wide belief that Steve, Hero, Doomguy, and Ryu Hayabusa were going to be the 4 characters for Fighters Pass Volume 1. Only one of them was. But Steve has proven to be true. So it kind of begs the question, are Doomguy and Ryu Hayabusa also perhaps a part of that? And Shifty, you did hear about Ryu Hayabusa at one point, which really only leaves like Doomguy is like maybe not, but I guess the thing is though is that it's possible that those were in talks and those are the ones that fell through. Or it's also possible that they're still in talks and they'll come later, or maybe they're not even in talks. Like it's just settled that they'll just happen later, and maybe they are coming to close out this pass, or there is already conversation going on for Volume 3, and they're gonna come then. Like we don't know. Like there's a lot of like variable here, right? So hard to say for sure, really. But I
will say though that just on the record that if Doomguy ended up being in, you couldn't get me any more hype at that point.
Yeah,
it'd be pretty cool.
Doomguy is the one character that I want.
One of my favorite characters of all time. So if it happens, I'll be happy. I don't have a Doom helmet for no reason.
That is a pretty cool helmet.
I think the only other one than Doomguy that would get me more excited would be if Master Chief made it in. But I doubt there'll be a third Microsoft rep. That'd be insane.
Are you creating our fan rule, Brandon?
Would also be a Microsoft
there can't be 3 characters from one publisher. Don't you worry, Master Chief's gonna smash that fan rule. Just you wait. I agree with you though. Master Chief seems a little unlikely, but I don't think it's impossible either. Like if there's a Volume 3, like if there is, that's crazy. No, I'm starting to like have a hope for a Volume 3 now. It's like thinking together. Okay, start off with Input, end with Silex.
The chances for that in my head are like 10% at best.
Don't raise the expectations.
Yeah.
Keep
My
them low.
confidence level that it will end after 2 is like 90% or more. I'm pretty sure it's not gonna be a third one.
We'll see. We will see. And actually, on that note, Shifty, I'm curious in perspective on this. So Master Chief is in Fortnite, right? So I'm sure you heard about the whole talk, like Samus is trending on Twitter, and at the time when that first started, like Kratos hadn't even been confirmed yet. Like it was like rumored, leaked. Kratos then came out, and not only was Kratos out as a Fortnite skin for PlayStation, but for every single platform, including Nintendo Switch and Xbox. So you can play as Kratos in Fortnite on your Nintendo Switch. At that point, Master Chief was rumored. But then at the Game Awards, it was confirmed that Master Chief would be in Fortnite, and now he's out, and we're playing it as a character in Fortnite, and you can play it on any system, and there it is. So Sony has a character, one of their biggest, most important characters, Kratos, playable on all platforms of Fortnite, including Nintendo, and they're a very stingy company. Like they're kind of similar to Nintendo in terms of protecting their franchises a little bit. And then Microsoft went ahead and put out their most important character on Fortnite, and it's playable across all platforms. So now Nintendo's kind of like the one that's left out a little bit here. And what's also interesting about this is that Samus would be more fitting than both Master Chief and Kratos because she's literally a bounty hunter, and Season 5 is all about bringing in different hunters from different realms into Fortnite. So then, what do you think, Shifty? You think Samus is coming to Fortnite or no?
Difficult to say, but I think it would be a good idea if Nintendo did it, but I think something about it tells me no. And the only reason why I think that is because of the part of the deal, I guess, is to make Samus playable in all the platforms. And I have a hard time seeing Nintendo doing that. I was surprised when Kratos did it, mind you. I do think it's surprising that PlayStation allowed that to be the case whatsoever, because I remember when that leak first happened, my first thought was, how is that going to work with other platforms, right?
Yeah.
And they just let everyone play.
Yeah.
You can purchase the character on your Xbox and play them on your Switch. Like it just does it that way. Microsoft, I had no qualms with. Microsoft seems to be the most lenient when it comes to the three.
Yeah.
With their properties.
They have to be in their position.
Right. Nintendo is the one that I have such a hard time seeing them agree to say, hey, we want Samus in our game, but that means we have to be able to buy Samus on my Xbox. That phrase, I feel like, is something that I just don't see Nintendo agreeing to. They could surprise me. I would love if they surprised me, because I think that would be the skin I'd be wearing the entire time I play the game. But I just don't see it happening, because there is a certain level of exclusivity, sort of, with those characters, where there's an alternate version of their skin they can only get on PS5 or Xbox Series X. But they could do something like that with Samus, but I just don't see
like the Zero Suit version. Like, remember Metroid Prime? That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, or they can give her a different suit, right? Like the dark suit or light suit or something.
Or a Metroid Prime 4 version of the suit.
Maybe.
You know?
Maybe.
So... Sorry, go on.
No, I think it would be really cool. I just don't see it happening. I guess that's like the summary of the whole point.
Yeah, I understand your point, because Nintendo is really picky, and that is the thing. That is the one thing that's like, oh, like if there's any company, they'd be like, you know what, screw you guys, we're not doing it. I don't care if it makes us look bad. We're not doing it. Like, it would be Nintendo. But if Sony's willing to do it, I just feel like Nintendo's not that different. And I also think that they've been progressing with how flexible they are with other companies. So if it were to happen, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And I'm actually leaning more towards yes than no. The other thing is that it doesn't have to be Samus. It could be another Nintendo character, like perhaps Star Fox or Captain Falcon. They would also fit. But I think the one that makes the most sense is Samus. But here's an interest. I want to address this comment in the chat here. I love everyone said Samus would have already come if she was coming to Fortnite, and I'll disagree, because Season 5 is going to go on for a little while. It's not closing anytime soon. Like, it's going to be a couple months, I believe, right? So throughout that entire time, there's going to be like a story happening in Fortnite. They're going to be bringing in different characters. So, this is an evolving thing. There's still opportunity to do that. Kratos came at its own separate time. Then the next week at the Game Awards, we saw Master Chief. Now, here's the thing. The reason why at one point I was thinking maybe we see a Metroid character announced, because I thought maybe that's when we see the Samus thing, right? But because Metroid wasn't revealed then, it doesn't really make sense to do the Samus thing either, because it would be promotion for Metroid. You know what you guys understand? So
Right.
The interesting thing, though, is that come January, there isn't any big game coming out then. That is the new year. The new year where Nintendo no longer has to worry about holiday sales and bastardizing those sales by making cool announcements for 2021, like perhaps a revision or showing off some other new awesome games for 2021. So once we enter January, we now enter the realm of maybe see a Nintendo Direct, maybe see some sort of presentation, maybe get a few more announcements for the rest of the year, and that also leaves a door open for potentially a Metroid announcement. When a Metroid announcement happens, guess what? If it's in a Nintendo Direct, they could also squeeze in, oh, here's a Fortnite update. Samus is coming to Fortnite. Like, they could easily do that, and January would still be in Season 5 for Fortnite. So, I wouldn't say it's too late yet. Like, it's definitely not too late. When Season 5 ends, that's when it's actually too late.
Yeah.
I could see that. But then also, I guess, and bringing back an argument that was mentioned when we were talking about Smash, would that be considered too early for advertising Metroid Prime 4? Or do you think
well,
they
it's
would
not
just
necessarily to advertise Metroid Prime 4, just advertise Metroid. Like, I'm not saying they reveal Metroid Prime 4 in January or February, whatever an earlier Direct would have, right? But there's other options. There's Prime Trilogy, and there's also the 2D Metroid that's supposedly been in development for a few years. There's 3 different Metroid games supposedly in development. Take your pick. They only have to announce one of them for it to make sense. You know what I mean? Like, it only has to be one of them.
Right. I mean, if they announce something like Metroid Prime Trilogy, I can see it happening. Because I think the one thing in common between Kratos and Master Chief is that they're both advertising something.
Right.
Because we know
Exactly.
we know God of War Ragnarok is coming. We know Halo Infinite is coming. So if Nintendo were to make a deal, they want to do the same thing. They're going to want to advertise some kind of character. And I think I could see Samus being that character, because hypothetically, if they said, oh, let's advertise Zelda, I can't imagine them being cool with Zelda holding like an M16. Like, I don't see that happening.
Imagine, but what if it's
or
Link?
Mario.
Imagine Link doing it, though.
I just have a hard time seeing, that existing in the gaming space.
I think Samus is the one that makes most sense because it fits her character the most. Not that Samus itself makes sense in Fortnite, but neither does Kratos or Master Chief. But in terms of just like the image of that character, and also they don't really need to market Mario or Zelda, but they do need to market Metroid. And that's the other thing, though, right? Like, the act of Sony putting in Kratos is far larger than the act of Nintendo putting in Samus. Like, Samus isn't as big as Kratos. Like, we're talking about tiers here. Like, Kratos is arguably the most important Sony character. Master Chief is the most important Microsoft character. Samus is like...
They didn't put Nathan Drake in. That would have made much more sense.
You could be right there,
But then you go back to the advertising part of things, right? There's no one new Uncharted.
Right, but God of War is coming out in 2021, as is Halo Infinite. So if there's a Metroid game planned for 2021, be it a Prime Trilogy or a 2D Metroid, it makes sense to market Samus in there. But I'll also kind of go back to the Zelda thing. Breath of the Wild 2 is likely coming out next year, we think, right? Link in Breath of the Wild is a hunter, so they could do Link. Like, that could happen. But I feel like Samus makes more sense.
Right, and again, I just don't see Nintendo wanting one of the most recognizable characters holding some of the weapons that you find in Fortnite. Especially the ones that are just like Mario and Kirby. Like, you're not gonna see that happen.
Yeah, you're not gonna see Mario running around with an AR.
Right, like, that's not gonna happen. It would be funny, but it's not gonna happen.
It would be.
I see it in my head. It's great.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Although I don't know what is Fortnite rated. What is that like? Is that M? It's not M, is it?
No
It's
way.
probably E. It's
No
probably
way.
E10 and up.
T, right?
I
Because I
imagine
can
it would be.
imagine, because I would imagine like they would probably put a character that matches its rating, right? Like something like Metroid.
I'm
You
trying
passed
to look
that
it
out.
up. I'm
I'm on the ESRB. Hold on.
teen.
It's rated teen, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You see, so it depends. I think it's not so much like whether or not it fits the character. It's whether or not it fits the image and how the character is available fits Nintendo standards, right?
Yeah.
So you're not gonna see Kirby because then one, it's not gonna make sense for Fortnite, and two, they probably don't want their rated E for everyone character, kid's character holding an AR.
But Samus is a teen-rated character.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I think Samus makes more sense.
Yeah. Now I'll say
and
that Zelda has been rated teen before, so that could maybe happen. But
What is Breath of the Wild rated?
I'm pretty sure it's rated teen.
Probably.
And Mario Odyssey is rated teen, E10 and up.
It might have more to do with again their image, right?
Right.
Because Nintendo has this image they keep, so they might not just
I
they
think
don't
the
want-
most.
It's rated E10 and up.
Oh, okay. So I mean, there you go. There is that there's a bit of a divide there. So I think Samus still makes the most sense. Samus is a bounty hunter. That's what Season 5 is all about, bringing in bounty hunters from different universes. Samus likely has a game or two on the horizon. So, given how they're using Kratos to market something and Master Chief to market something, it makes sense to do Samus there. Samus is not as big of a deal as Mario or Zelda, right? So, or Link, I should say. So Nintendo putting in Samus instead of Mario or Link is already kind of Nintendo being Nintendo and being more reserved than the other companies, On top of that, like, to your point, Shifty, having Link or Mario use a gun doesn't really match their brand for it as much. Now, I'm not saying it matches Samus perfectly, but if we look at the ESRBs, Samus is not as really much of a complication because Metroid games are usually teen anyway. Actually, I'd love it if they would go the extra mile and go mature. Like, they don't have to do mature, but the point, like, Metroid is dark, so that's not really an issue.
Right. I think Samus makes the most sense, and even Captain Falcon, considering he's a bounty hunter too, but he hasn't had a game.
He's also never bounty hunted in
that too.
Yeah.
It's just like something that they tell you he is, but they don't quite show it.
Right. Yeah. So Samus is the best fit, but of course, to your point, Nintendo is Nintendo. We're not really sure. But I just want to point out, a lot of people sort of count out Samus because it hasn't been revealed yet. They weren't going to reveal them at the same time. Obviously, hindsight is 2020. Now we know that. But when Nintendo has an opportunity to reveal Metroid, that's when it can maybe happen. So if there's a Nintendo Direct in January or February, that would still be around the time Season 5 is still doing things, still doing crossovers with Fortnite. It could happen then. But once Season 5 ends, there you go. The window is closed. It is not happening. So we'll see what happens in 2021. And I do want to get your thoughts on that, because I saw one of your videos when you were talking about that. But before we do, I want to cover Super Nintendo World a little bit. I want to get your thoughts on that before we close things out with our splendid 2021 speculation. So, the Super Nintendo World Direct. That happened. It was unexpected, at least for me it was. And I gotta tell you, even though it only had entirely Mario stuff, which was expected based off the photos, it was awesome. Like, I want to go to that cafe, I want to eat all the food, I want to get the little watch and press it on everything. It just looks so fun, and I know they only gave us a little taste, but that taste has me so excited. I want to be there in Japan day one, and I know it's not really at all realistic, but I definitely want that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you there. If it was possible for me to go day one, I would. Or at least convince like 8 of my friends to make it easy to go over there. I also would do that. But
hey, I mean, vacation time. How much will it cost to go to Japan and get a hotel and then go to the park and also deal with COVID?
A lot.
Yeah,
too much.
A lot. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, it's exciting to see it, especially just, I don't know why, but I was hit with a certain wave of nostalgia just on the first like room he goes into.
Yeah.
Where it shows the Mario 64 floor and the painting of Bomb on Battlefield. and it has
the
the
music
like,
going.
that's that nostalgia rush that Nintendo wants to hit everyone coming in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's exactly what they want. And the fact that I got that from the video alone means that I'm one of those people that clearly wants to spend money and go there, right, and have fun. So I think they're doing a good job on that front. They definitely do need to expand, right? Like, because I think it shouldn't be called Super Nintendo World if it's literally just, Mario. But I do think that expecting them to open a brand new first ever park with 8 franchises or 5 franchises, probably expecting a lot, right? Mind you, I don't know how much work goes into it. I think their focus is Mario because that's their image. Everyone associates Mario with Nintendo more than anything, so they're probably just thinking, okay, we're gonna do this first, right? Well, we're gonna focus on expansion because they already said they got was it Florida, LA, and
there's a
Singapore.
Yeah.
So I think they want to focus on getting it built and getting it built everywhere else, like as much as they can, so that way they can get that profit margin going up, make that profit, and then once that profit's coming in, they can then justify building whole other sections for Zelda and all these other franchises.
I will say because the app that they were talking about in the Direct got data mined somehow. I have no idea how it already got data mined.
Anything's
but
possible.
It did. And there's tons and tons of Donkey Kong references, which we saw the patents originally for Donkey Kong rides that don't exist in the park.
I think
so I
that's
imagine that the next
on.
expansion, will be Donkey Kong.
Okay.
Which makes sense because Donkey Kong is really important to
app.
Nintendo's history.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially considering how closely associated it is with Mario.
Right.
Like it'd be the easiest one to kind of transition into.
Exactly. Like there's a couple different ways they could go about it. Like they could do like the whole like Aztec Mayan theme that we see like in the Donkey Kong Country games. Like I would love to see that. But they also could go the other path of like do it like New Donk City, have like the red girders and like the Donkey Kong on top. Like there's some interesting things they could do there for sure. I mean, if you have like a New Donk City expansion, bro, oh my god, a New Donk City expansion! I want that so much. Like that'd be so cool.
Epic.
Yeah. Imagine like a New Donk City style cafe. Like I don't know why I always just think about food when it comes to these parks, but
right. Well, have you seen the food? That looks amazing. Minus mushrooms. I don't really like mushrooms. Everything else.
It's not real mushroom.
Looked
though.
amazing.
It's like a mushroom.
I like mushrooms in my burgers and whatnot, so maybe
the mushroom burger looked amazing. The food looked so good. I want to eat everything there. I'm hungry. I'm sorry. I'm gonna order something, I think. But
going beyond the food, I love just how much like movement and animation and stuff there is in the park. There's so many moving things, and they even have the activities that even use the movements like for an actual real purpose other than just to look cool.
Yeah.
And then there's just a lot of stuff that makes it feel like a real place, like you're actually in the Mario world.
You can
go into the restaurant and you hear the toads and you Chef Toad and stuff, which is cool.
Yeah.
Actual voice acted toads was interesting.
Yeah.
I could see them doing a lot of different things like with the activities they have, because like Brandon said, they clearly are using the actual like movements of the park itself as like activities and games and whatnot. So I can see them doing something like that with Donkey Kong, like the recreation of the arcade game. Maybe you have an activity that you have to make Jumpman jump over a barrel and you gain coins for that or something.
Right.
If they expand into Zelda, I can see them doing a lot of cool things with Zelda in particular. I can see them maybe having an activity where you have to pull out the Master Sword. Maybe there's an activity where
they have to have like it'll be as simple as just a photo spot. You just have the sword there where people can go. They had that in Disney World with the sword for the
Sword in the Stone.
The Sword in the Stone thing, yeah.
King Arthur?
For King Arthur, right. They used to have that there. So they have to do that for Zelda. I mean, they could have like a Hyrule Field. They could break horses and have like a little horse ride thing. Like they could do like the Divine Dragons and have it be like roller coasters, and like kind of fly through Breath of the Wild in a Space Mountain kind of way.
I can see them doing a dinner spot where it looks like it's outside and they give you food that's from Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
like recreations of those, and plus other actual normal food.
Like, oh my god, like it could be like so all right, so you know how like Donkey Kong area could be like New Donk City, like Castle Town could be like the area for Zelda, right? And then it can expand. It can go out the gates to kind of have the Divine Dragon, right, where you fly through Hyrule Field and stuff, right? But then they could still have other things as well. Like it could even be like almost like going to like a Renaissance fair, because Zelda's very fantasy medieval, right? Like they could do that. There's just so much potential. They have to have an Animal Crossing section for the record, and probably also a Splatoon section, because those are also big franchises. Pokemon, they could also throw in there, and that could be its whole other thing as well. And then everything else, all the other franchises, like I don't think they need their own dedicated sections, but it would at least might be nice to have like some sort of attraction thrown in there, you know? And they could be mixed into the other areas.
Yeah, I can see Splatoon being like the choice if they want to do like a sort of laser tag like thing somewhere in there.
Right.
Or
some kind of like VR game, because I'm curious, like, because obviously they don't want to just do paintball, because the point of Splatoon is to cover the ground more than killing people. Yeah. So it'd be weird to do paintball. But if they did some kind of like VR thing, we actually run around and with it, you know, and cover the ground.
They are doing augmented
Splatoon,
reality with the Mario Kart ride, like
right.
Yeah. They want to incorporate the interactivity, the gaming culture here. Like that's gonna be a big part of this park. Like it's not just like a traditional park. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they expand on this. Now, one thing I'm concerned about is that because they're working with Universal here, like so these parks, from what I understand, are like kind of put into different parts of Universal. And because of that, like I think there's like an inherent space limitation here. So as much as we want them to expand, like how much can they really expand? You know, I don't know. They may be able to expand a lot more than I realized, but I'm just saying, like there may be some limitation there. So we can have these pipe dreams about all these different things they could add for a Nintendo park, but they may not be able to get to everything, even if we give them like 10 to 20 years to do so. Although maybe at that point they just buy up more property. I don't know, but just pointing that out.
Right. I mean, my mind just races at the idea of the different activities they can have.
Yeah,
like
and all the food.
Right. Like I think Korok seed hunting could even be another thing they could add.
Oh yeah, like just finding them throughout the area.
Right, because they have activities that are as simple as just putting your wrist up to like a scanner, right, or just hitting a block, right. Those aren't really something you stay there and play. You just do it by passing by, really.
Right.
So I can see that
everyone just starts punching random things all the time. Just like, does this work? Bah! Does this work? Bah!
Right, and I could see them having the equivalent of that for Zelda being Korok seed hunting. Right, maybe there's the occasional like secret symbol you saw somewhere that wasn't somewhere else. You put it, and oh look, it's suddenly Korok, and you see the little Korok in your phone or something.
Yeah,
like, it could be like they can have a lot of ideas, but yeah, I agree with Andres that like it really depends on how much space they have and what they're willing to put in there. Right?
Yeah, I'm imagining the Zelda area more like they could have a concert area where they just kind of go through the Zelda concert thing. It doesn't even have to be like live. It could just be like big like digital screen with like seating area. Maybe they could have some performers there to sort of dance or what have you. I'm already imagining that like they would definitely have like Zelda and Link be cosplayed. Like it wouldn't be like giant stuffed dolls, because Mario and Luigi make sense for stuffed dolls, but for Link and Zelda it would be like, you know, real people just cosplaying instead of being inside like, you know, the big costume things.
Right.
Like there's so many different things they could do. For Samus, it could be a VR thing. Like it could just be kind of like they could have like a spooky area where, like, have you ever done in Universal they had like this ride where you would like put on like you would have like shoot like little lasers and kind of like run through. It'd be something like that, but it could be like, you know, first person perspective, have the visor on, shoot aliens in a scary like path sort of thing that's kind of like Alien, but not that scary because it would be for kids as well, but still have to be spooky. Star Fox could be like literally like a Space Mountain flying ride. Like you get in the R-Wing and you fly around and you're shooting through space. And they could still make that a game too. Like you could still like aim and shoot, and then whichever team has the highest score wins. Like that's pretty much it. Like there's just so much they can do. There's just so much. It's just crazy what they could do. I want more, but I'll at least enjoy the Mario Park for the time being. So,
Right.
but I want to move on because, you know, there's still other stuff to be discussed. Is there anything else you want to touch on with this Nintendo Park before we move on, though?
Not really. Just excited for it.
Yeah, I'm extremely
Yeah,
excited.
just super hyped.
It's going to be amazing.
Can't wait for it to come to the States.
Yeah. That'll be a little bit easier to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing that is pretty exciting is potentially a Switch Pro coming out next year. Now, the reason we're talking about this now is because, well, recently I talked about it on the channel, but the reason I talked about it on the channel is because Doug Bowser had an interview with Polygon, and he was asked several questions. Now, he didn't say, oh yeah, guys, Switch Pro's coming out next. So he basically just gave us the non-answer, or we're always looking into different technologies, but there's nothing I can say at this point. He was also asked about the March 31st thing, how 3D All-Stars is expiring, all the Mario 35th Anniversary stuff is expiring at March 31st, as is Fire Emblem. The Fire Emblem thing didn't come up, which I thought was interesting, but he just basically said it's a celebration. But the point is, a lot of this sort of led to some speculation and talks, more Switch Pro videos coming out. I did my own, kind of just pointing out the different things pointing to it. But I guess I'll just sort of ask you guys, how do you guys feel at this point? Because it's always changing, right? But at this point, how do you guys feel about a Switch Pro in 2021?
Personally, I feel like I really, really want one, but for some reason, I can't get myself to believe that it's actually happening. It just doesn't. Some reason, my gut feels like it's not that likely, and I don't know why. Because in my mind, when I think about it, and I try to logic it out, it kind of makes sense, and it's something I really want, and I know a lot of people really want it, and it's kind of like the one flaw of the Switch. There's one of its major flaws is just how underpowered it is compared to everything else. So it would make sense to release a mid-gen refresh there. And I think that's something that you could actually market really, really well. That would actually sell way better than, say, like the Xbox One X or the PS4 Pro did. But for some reason, something inside me has been like, nah, it's not gonna happen. I don't know why.
Well, how do you feel about Breath of the Wild 2? Are you down that that's going to happen too? Because
No,
they hadn't
100%.
talked about it?
No, 100% that's happening.
What do you think, Shifty?
Tired, I think, is the right word to use when it comes to Switch Pro, and primarily because we've heard this time and time again. It almost feels like the rumors back with the I think it was the HD Wii or the Wii HD or whatever it was, where that used to be a thing that people were swearing by that would happen, and it just didn't become a thing unless you count the Wii U, I guess.
Some people say, "Oh yeah, Nintendo finally did." No, you dumb butt. That's just a next generation system.
Yeah, and I guess I feel like that's this generation's equivalent, where I'm kind of in the same camp as Brandon, where I feel like it's something I would want. It's definitely something I would end up getting day one, right? Because I think while I do love my Switch, I do see the same things that Brandon sees, that it could be better. Right, and that's one of the things you could improve upon. Because I don't think the form factor is an issue at all. That's the best thing about the Switch, right? Yeah. But when you look at, say, some third-party ports, some are passable, right, and some aren't. The ones that aren't would benefit a ton from a Switch Pro, and so does the ones that are passable by whoever standards we're looking at. And I think it's something I really would like. It's just I just don't see it happening. I feel like it's one of those rumors that people want to believe so badly because they want it so badly that it's almost like they're trying to will it into existence,
Right.
Okay.
But if it does happen, I would love it. Like I would be ecstatic. I'd be hyped. I'd be day one talking about how amazing it is. But I after so long of hearing it since 2017, well, like 3 years since, it was first really talked about, I think. And we still see nothing. Every time
people talked about it way too early. Like it really shouldn't even have been a discussion until pretty recently.
I remember there was some talk about it happening in 2019, but once there was just a Switch Lite and the updated Switch, I was like, all right, this is not happening for a while. And then at the beginning of 2020, Nintendo literally said, hey, this is not happening this year, so don't worry about it. And I was like, all right, Nintendo said it's not happening, so it's not happening in 2020. Like, so for me, like, I've never really thought that the Switch Pro would happen before 2021. Like, The reason I think it's happening in 2021 is because, well, guess what? Nintendo does revise their systems. They've been doing it. They've already done it on the Switch a couple times. They're gonna do it again. That to me is just obvious. Now, is it gonna be what we want? That's harder. But I also buy the Bloomberg report. Like, Bloomberg is not like a Reddit post. It is an actual report. It is a business site. They're reporting on real information. Now, the thing is, even though they're reporting on real information, that doesn't mean that information is being told to them in the most accurate way. Like, it's information about something that hasn't come to the market yet. So it's in flux. Things can change. Same thing with Minecraft Steve, for example, right? Same thing with Ryu Hayabusa. It's not that you were fed false information necessarily. It's just perhaps you got information of something early on that wasn't really... It was in the talks, but it didn't necessarily happen. So I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen with the Bloomberg report, but the point is, the idea that something is in the works, like that is, I 100% believe that something is being considered at least, and the idea that Nintendo will have another revision is not at all shocking. In fact, I think it should be expected because that's what they've been doing. That's what they did with the Game Boy, that's what they did with the DS, that's what they did with the 3DS. Now you could argue, oh, but the Switch isn't a DS or a 3DS, it's a home console. Well, it's actually a hybrid, and they're already following that sort of trend of what they did with the other systems because they already gave us a Switch Lite and they already gave us the second version of the base Switch as well. I expect there to be more. The fact that Nintendo said that that there wouldn't be any revisions in 2021, I mean in 2020, I should say, I feel like that's suggesting that, hey, there could be revisions coming later down the road, and they haven't confirmed otherwise. Like, I think it's fairly likely. If you look at what's going with Nvidia and what they're doing with DLSS 2.0, it sort of makes the idea of the Bloomberg report more feasible because they're saying there'll be 4K capabilities. DLSS 2.0 makes it possible for mobile hardware to pull that off. So I think it's happening, and but I don't think we're gonna find out about it until next year.
Okay, yeah, I could see that. I think what makes people disagree on whether or not it's happening, because I feel it is inevitable that we're gonna see revisions of some capacity, right? I think it's just to what extent is that revision going to be,
right?
Is where we kind of vary, right? So whether or not it's going to be 4K capable, or be capable for, like, I don't know, in terms of power relative to like anything remotely close to next gen consoles or PCs or anything like that, it really varies by person. I think it's a guarantee, right, that we're going to see some kind of revision. But to the extent of what the Switch Pro rumors have been, like 4K capable and all that, I think that's the part where I'm just not sure on.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is inevitable because we have, like you said, we have seen it with the 3DS. I think the new 3DS specifically, I don't remember, I think it was like a CPU upgrade.
Yeah, it was mostly a CPU upgrade. It was like a very big leap too.
Yeah. So I feel like if it's not to the extent of Switch Pro, I could see something like that to that kind of extent, right?
To be honest, the CPU and RAM upgrade would help so much for the Switch getting those frame rates up, because a lot of it is CPU limited more than GPU limited. We know this because of mods and stuff that allow you to overclock certain elements, and we can see what performance gains come from overclocking certain different aspects of the hardware. So honestly, a new 3DS-like improvement with something like DLSS to help on the GPU side would be huge.
Right. I think it really just depends on what kind of upgrades you're expecting, because I feel like the Switch Pro specific mode would be a bigger jump than what the 3DS, the new 3DS were. But if it was, say, a little bit lesser and something more akin to like the 3DS to new 3DS upgrade, then yeah, I can see that happening. Like I think is more feasible and more realistic. But at the same time, again, I would love it to be either one of the two, right? Like I would love it to be the best upgrades we could possibly have. This is one of those things I want to be wrong on. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, it just depends on like just to what extent are they willing to take it. You know,
I'll tell you that
NVIDIA themselves might push for things like this because NVIDIA has so many technologies, and they're pretty far ahead a lot of times in mobile tech that I feel like they themselves might push Nintendo to do some upgrades or just help them to know what to do.
Yeah. Forgot what I was gonna say. It was oh right. So I'll tell you that some people are of like the impression that there's a need to get a Switch Pro out there because the current Switch cannot run some big third-party games. I just think that I don't really agree with the logic behind that, because they're not going to release a system that has exclusive games. One, because that would be very upsetting to fans, but also two, that'd be alienating this huge install base they already have. So the whole idea of like, oh, we just got to get a newer Switch out there, that way all of a sudden big third-party games can be played on the Nintendo Switch. Well, they're not going to, if it's not possible on the base Switch, they're not going to start doing it just because there's a more powerful version of the current Switch. Like, it has to work on both systems. If it doesn't work on both systems, they would have to make it exclusive, and if they make it exclusive, they're not going to make that much money, and they're going to upset fans. Like, there's not really any point in doing it then. So I just don't agree with that.
The amount of work it takes to get these games to run the Switch and run well is huge. It's very big. It's not like porting a game from the PS4, say, to like the Xbox or to PC, because they have to change assets. They're not using the same stuff. They have to go and make new assets and all this stuff to get it to work. So it's a lot of effort,
right?
A lot of development time. So it's expensive. So if you're not getting sales from it, it's not really worth it for them.
Exactly. Yes, they're not going to go through all this expense just to do that. But I'll say that the premise of like DLSS 2.0 or some sort of upscaling, that's a little different, right? Where the games work on either version of Switch, be it Switch Lite, base Switch, or Switch Pro, whatever it's going to be called, and the games just run at a higher setting that basically just kind of upscales things a little bit, and they have a smoother frame rate. That's something I can see. That's not like that much of a dramatic improvement, but it is a nice improvement that some people will feel it will be worth it. That's what I sort of see happening. But that's pretty much it.
How would you feel if hypothetically they followed a sort of new 3DS approach where they have exclusive games, but they're specifically Nintendo games, and they are, let's say, like just 4 of them or 5 of them, something like a very small number?
I just think it'd be a bad idea.
I think Nintendo saw that didn't do well with the new 3DS. People weren't really into that, and they stopped that pretty quickly.
And what you notice is the biggest games,
very, very specific titles.
Right, yeah. And what you notice is the biggest games still were available on all the systems, all the versions of 3DS. They tried out a few things, like the Hyrule Warriors and Xenoblade Chronicles. It didn't work. To Brandon's point, it didn't work. So I don't think they're going to do that again. I think they tried that strategy, not a good idea. And it would also look really bad because PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X weren't like that. All the games for all Xboxes worked on all the Xboxes, and the same for PlayStation. So I don't think Nintendo's going to do that. They would lose a lot of money. They'd piss off fans. I just don't think there's any point in doing that. I don't expect that at all.
I could say from a money perspective, pissing off fans, I don't really think they seem to be too concerned about these things.
Not at the moment, no.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Yeah. There's some merit to what you're saying there. Yeah.
But I mean, if it doesn't make sense financially, they wouldn't do it. And I don't really know what the profit margin was when they were doing that. Right.
I mean, the idea behind it is you want to get people to buy that system.
Right.
That's why you do it. But that wasn't really needed. I think if you want people to buy a system, then have people buy a system because of the merits of the system itself. And right. I feel like with all the hype behind Switch Pro, it will sell.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have it sell amongst the hardcore fan base, right? Like people like us, right? Like I'm sure like a lot of people in the chat too. They would be the type of audience who would buy a Switch Pro. or Switch Plus, as you've been calling it, Andres. I just feel like if they do this, because we've seen Nintendo have issues with not similar SKUs, but rather similar systems and advertising, right? So they would have to make it very clear in the advertising as to what it is and what it does, because PS4 Pro made that clear. Xbox One X did not make that clear, right? And
did you see that Xbox One X sales went up when Series X was shown?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You'll have a situation like that. So I feel like if you're gonna have advertisements out there revealing the Switch Pro, and you wanted to, recoup not losses, but increase that profit margin, they're gonna want to not have a Wii U mistake or an Xbox One X mistake. They want to have, a very clear and concise message as to what.
I will say the new 3DS, despite the absolute horrendous naming, actually did sell really well and became a big part of the 3DS's install base.
It basically became like the main version. Like the new 3DS XL and new 3DS were the main versions.
It was like a lot of people double dip too, which I think if they handle it right, because I don't think a Switch Plus would be that expensive. I think maybe they could get out for like 350 at 400 at the most, but I don't even think they'd try for 400. So if it's only a little bit more, people trade in their Switches for like $200 and then, get a Switch Plus. And people who are looking at buying a new Switch go, I can, my phone. I can get this newer version for only like $50 to $100 more, and it's a lot better. I see how all these third-party games run on the base Switch. That's kind of iffy. Maybe I should buy this newer one.
Yeah, maybe. I think if you just like as you already sort of suggested, Brandon, like if you look at the 3DS, it was basically phased out for the new 3DS, right? So that could be something similar with the Switch Pro Plus thing. Like they come out with it, and maybe at first it's sort of seen more as like a deluxe version, but as time progresses, they slowly phase out the base Switch, and it becomes more of a situation where this is just a new version of the Switch. Right. So, and the new 3DS had improved. If you played games on the base 3DS and moved on to the new 3DS, it was better to play games on the new 3DS. Like games had better frame rate, they didn't lag as much. It felt better.
The loading times were so nice.
The loading times were nicer. It was more comfortable to hold the controller, bigger screen. So it was a better experience. Even the whole 3D thing with being able to track with the face tracking there, like it was a better experience to have the new 3DS to play your games. I think it'll be kind of a similar thing for the Switch Pro Plus Extravaganza Deluxe.
I will add on to it that if it is like exactly how it's rumored to be, where it's a 4K capable console that's portable and all that good stuff, if they do the plan where they phase out the original Switch and it just sort of ends up replacing it for 300, that would be an insanely good competitive price, considering that the only other console that is available at that price is the Xbox Series S, which isn't even a 4K targeting console.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that would be an amazing, I don't know what we would call it, marketing strategy or
it would
pricing.
Be marketing, because there's no way that Switch, whatever the Switch is going to have like native 4K games. There's just no way. This is going to be weaker than the Series S, right? It's just going to have like some sort of upscaling feature, what have you, where it makes games look nicer on a 4K monitor, and the games will look better, but it's not like everything is truly 4K, right? I don't know how exactly the technical know-how that made. Brandon, you can explain that, but
the lowest bounds that DLSS 2.0 currently works at is scaling from 720p up to 4K. So as long as you can get your game data native 720p, you can upscale it all the way to 4K using DLSS.
Okay.
It won't look as good as if you upscale it from like say 1080p, but it's not that much worse, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's really more of the marketing thing. Like, they may market it as like a 4K Switch or a 4K capable system, just so even if it doesn't have the same kind of power, the point will simply be that, hey, games look and run better here than your other Switch versions. And because it takes advantage of 4K capabilities to some extent, a lot of people who are thinking about, oh, maybe I should get a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or Series S because they want to take advantage of their 4K televisions or monitors, they're like, oh, well, the Switch has this 4K capability, I'll just stick around with this. Like, I think that's maybe a part of like their marketing there, just to sort of catch some of that 4K excitement.
Right, and I think if it's priced at the same price tag as a console that's not really targeting 4K, or it's more so 1440p or so, that's a really good deal. Like, if you really think of, like, you don't really have to think about it that far. You could say, oh, Switch Plus is targeting it's 4K capable, right? That's the phrase that's used, 4K capable.
Yeah.
So they can just use that phrase, sell this portable system, and then when people look at it, they're like, oh, hey, I want this new system. I don't have that much money to spend. I'm not trying to spend $400, $500. There's these $300 systems. One of them is portable and targets 4K. One of them doesn't, right? And one of them is stay at home, right?
And
then
one
you
of them
have
has Mario, and
exactly that's the other thing
too.
Right. So it's like, how badly do I? You know, you can kind of see the comparison there. Like,
Right.
300 is a very competitive price for it. You can easily make the argument that the Switch is the better buy at that point, considering the alternative is, mind you, the Series S is not a bad console. It's just because it's 300 by itself. But if you have another competitor in that same price range, that exact same price, offering Zelda, Mario at 4K, that's a lot better for most people, I think.
It sounds like a hell of a deal.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I feel like that's what they could go for. Now, obviously, guys, this is like speculation. We're basing this off reports and things, sure, but until Nintendo announces something, we don't actually know. Like, it's possible that maybe they're talking about 4K stuff, but they may not be ready to make that transition. They may be like, okay, I think there is, like, for sure going to be a revision next year, like, for sure. But what will that revision entail? Hard to say. But either way, you know, I think something's coming out. And if they do have, like, this 4K upscaling or DLSS 2.0, whatever it is, it makes sense to kind of market in that way, because, to your point, Shifty, like, it sounds a lot better than a Series S to, like, an average consumer.
Right.
Yeah. But before we close things out, I want to check with the chat here, and then I want to sort of ask you, because I know you made a video on it like a few months ago, but I'm curious what you think, like, about 2021. But let me check with the chat here, and then that'll be the end of the podcast. Birdman Anatomy. Did Nintendo say there will not be a Switch revision in 2020 or by the end of Nintendo's financial year, March 2021? So I'll say that according to CNET, Nintendo's boss Shuntaro Furukawa told investors that the company has no plans to release another version of its hybrid console this year. So that's open for interpretation. This year can be taken as 2020. It can be taken as the fiscal year, which goes until March 31st. Hard to say. I'll also tell you that even if they only meant this year, given the whole pandemic situation, even if they were planning to have it come out by March, they may have to wait a little bit longer now because of the whole pandemic situation. So keep that in mind. But one thing I actually want to point out that's interesting is during Sakurai's presentation at the beginning, he pointed out to us that he's working in a studio again. It's no longer from home. He's working with other people in a studio again. So at least for the Smash Bros. Team, it's looking like they're getting back to a norm. If the Smash Bros. Team is getting back to a norm, I wouldn't be surprised if the other Nintendo teams are close to getting back to a norm as well. So I just feel like that's just kind of worth noting there. I think that bodes well for 2021 is my point.
The only team I could see, the biggest team I think that's going to have issues is probably Retro Studios, because they're based in Austin.
You take that back.
Very big hotspot. Along
right,
with,
though.
well, all of America, because we're all morons, apparently.
Yeah, I have no idea how they're handling that. But it's a good point. That is Nintendo's Western developer. That they are expanding. I hope they become better, but the pandemic probably is impacting them. So then that's another thing. Like, another reason to maybe not expect Prime 4 anytime soon, because the pandemic likely has delayed things. Especially now that they're hiring so many new people. They're hiring so many new people that they may not even be able to see in person for a while. You know, so that is definitely challenging for sure. Flippin'. Do you think Nintendo will create a Switch Pro or a next-gen Switch? They're going to create both, I think. It's not going to be called Switch Pro, but I think there's probably going to be a few more revisions, not even just one, before the Switch is done. Nintendo repeatedly has said throughout this year that they're only about halfway through the Switch's life cycle. Even Doug Bowser, in the most recent Polygon interview that came out this week, mentioned how, hey, we're only about halfway through the Switch's life cycle, which means we have about, like another 3 years? So, 3 years from now, maybe then we see a next generation Switch. Like, that's going to happen, but it's not, like, happening too soon from now. Let's see here. Taker610. What if they release 2 versions of each game so they could have a base game that runs well on base hardware and then a pro version really optimized for the new hardware? I don't think they need to have 2 separate cartridges. Like, you can have that setting kind of within the game itself, right, Brandon?
Say that again. I was reading comments.
Oh, sorry. So Taker610 is basically asking what if they could like just release 2 different versions, like an optimized version for Switch Pro and and then a base Switch version. But if they're gonna do that, then they don't have to have. They would do that. It just wouldn't be marketed as 2 separate versions. It would just be all in the same thing, all in the same piece of software.
It'd be all in the same piece of software. That's how they do it for everything else.
Yeah.
It would likely. I imagine if they did that not all the information would be on the cart. Some of it would be downloaded. I'm pretty sure next-gen games do that, where not everything's on the disc. So you put it in, it reads what system you have, obviously, and it downloads the necessary data for your version. Yeah. So it might be that.
Yeah, also some third-party games that are basically entirely, you have to download already before you can play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like the cartridge is just there. It's like, hey, look, you have the game, but the game is really all online. You have to download it.
The cartridge is the key.
It's just the key, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how disc-based media is these days.
It's proof of purchase. Cartridges are just receipts.
Physical media is in general.
Birdman added me. All the Switch Pro needs is more memory and a higher memory bandwidth right now. It's a 25 gigabyte, so hopefully the Switch Pro has at least 50 gigabytes or more of bandwidth. You mean like the flash memory in the system for storage? I honestly, that's for me, it's like a non-issue because I just put in a micro SD card and I don't worry about it. That's just me. So if they
might be talking about the RAM, but I'm not sure.
But no, the RAM's 4 gigabytes. It's not 25 to 50.
No, but he's talking about bandwidth, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he means both, actually. Yeah. I mean, I expect both, right? I expect the
typically when you say memory, you mean RAM, but he could just be saying the wrong thing.
Yeah, he's saying RAM.
More memory and a higher memory bandwidth. Okay.
Yeah, it does. Actually
yes, the RAM.
Really need it. It does.
More RAM.
I'd hope it'd be more than that. I'd hope it'd be a bigger jump.
Yeah. I see Alexander Barussos as trying to get my attention.
Dedicated.
Hey, Andres, you look like the young version of Ramachandra from Matrix Revolutions. All right. Cool. Thanks. So let's see here. The Switch Pro needs more RAM. That's what Birdman said. Yeah. I mean, if he wants to like run games at a higher resolution, I would agree.
Though DLSS does solve a lot of the issues with RAM consumption. It's much lower. But still, it does need more RAM.
I like the system to load a little bit faster too, especially if with the PS5 and Series X loading games like instant. It'd be nice if they had a Switch Pro just kind of load things a little bit faster too. Like if they want to kind of market it as something to sort of like steer away some of that attention for next generation systems, being able to load relatively quick is important. Now, it's not that the Switch has slow loading times, but if they can improve that, that'd be nice.
I will say loading times are also very CPU dependent, which is why you saw the new 3DS get much faster load times. So if they upgrade the CPU, because the CPU unpacks compressed data, so the faster it can unpack compressed data, the faster it loads the game. But there's also tons of other bottlenecks, which is why the next gen has so much very specific hardware. So I don't know what they could do. They could probably make it a lot better, but not to the not competing with next gen. Gotcha.
So let's move on to like the final little thing here. So Shifty, like I saw on your channel, like you were sort of it seemed like you were kind of saying that basically you think 2021 is going to be a pretty good year for Nintendo.
Right.
Do you still feel that way now? And why do you think that?
Okay, well, I'll start off by saying why I feel that way, because I do pretty much still feel the same way.
Okay.
And I feel most of it has to do with partially how bare bones 2020 was for Nintendo.
Trash.
Where we basically, what was it? We got Animal Crossing,
Paper Mario.
I totally forgot about Paper
Age
Mario.
of
Paper
Calamity.
Mario, and that was, I guess, Mario, but
Yeah.
that's just the collection. So
There wasn't really many. Yeah.
And there was a lot of evidence when I believe it was. I don't know if it was around when they announced the collection for Mario, or if it was when it released. I forgot what it was, but we had like basically evidence that this collection and these different Mario activities was supposed to happen way earlier, right?
Yeah, back
But
in
were pushed back.
or something.
Right, exactly, and it was pushed back, presumably because of COVID.
It was like
right?
almost 6 months. Of a delay.
Right, it was like a
Yeah.
6 month difference. It was also widely believed that the same thing happened to Super Mario 3D World, right?
Right.
Where it's releasing, what was it, March, I think it was?
It's releasing in February, and the speculation was that it was going to actually release in October, and Pikmin 3 Deluxe was moved up to take its place.
Right. So my idea typically was going off of the idea that seemingly a lot of things are happening later for the obvious reasons already stated. So I believe that by the time 2021 is coming around, and mind you, this is kind of being slightly proven right with Sakurai saying that they have a studio again,
Yeah.
that by the time 2021 comes around, most Nintendo studios are going to be caught up, or if not, become more efficient than they were during 2020,
Sure.
because, COVID will not calm down, but, they'll have better ways of dealing with it, have better ways to combat it, and, keep
The
their...
vaccine's getting there, so...
Right. So there's a lot of things that's going to change, that's going to make development go back to the normal pace that they were typically used to planning things for. So not only are we going to see many games that are supposed to be for 2020 released in 2021, like Super Mario 3D World, like No More Heroes 3, games that were clearly meant for 2020 that ended up becoming 2021. I believe Bravely Default 2 is 2021 now, right?
Yeah, for February.
Right. So that's another game that was supposed to be for 2020. That's 2021 now.
Yep.
So the general idea of my video was basically just saying that if you take into account all these games that were delayed into 2021, and then on top of that, talk about games that were always going to be 2021 games, like, say, Breath of the Wild 2, and any other games they have planned, the year 2021 for Nintendo specifically has a lot of potential to be a really, really strong year for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. For sure. I'll say, to kind of play devil's advocate, though, that if they have more games from 2020 to kind of push into 2021, they're probably going to spread things out a little bit. So, given that they won't have as much of a need for certain games because of all the extra games that'll be in there, they may move up a game or two for the next year to kind of save them for then, right? If they can get away with it, they will, I think. But I'll also tell you that if we look at 2017, and I think you agree with me here, 2017 is like the best Switch year by far in terms of like just output of quality internally developed Nintendo games, right? Not in terms of sales necessarily, but just in terms of like the quality output from Nintendo. 2017 is like hands down the best year, and you could argue like maybe the best year ever for Nintendo history, right? It's up there for sure. The teams that made those games in 2017 haven't come out with games since then. Mario Odyssey team, nothing, not since 2017. The Zelda team finished Breath of the Wild March 2017. We know they're working on Breath of the Wild 2. It's been nearly 4 years. Splatoon 2 came out then. I know the team I think also works on Animal Crossing, but they obviously work on more than one project at a time. So, they could be drumming up something else, but not necessarily, but still. Monolith Soft, they have several different studios. They only came out with Definitive Edition last year, a remaster. Xenoblade 2 came out in 2017. That's also in the cards. The Mario Kart ARMS team. Last game they made was ARMS in 2017. What else? There's a few others. Mario Kart Deluxe is a deluxe collection thing, but you get my point. The big, main, internal Nintendo teams all came out with stuff in 2017. They haven't come out with anything major, save for Animal Crossing, since then, really. So, 4 years is about enough time to finish a major AAA game. So don't be surprised if you see a couple more announcements next year.
Right, and that's the thing. Going off of your point about how they can easily push a game or two, to the next year. That's why I have to stress that this is about potential, right?
Yeah.
That obviously, I don't think it's a guarantee that 2021 is going to be this massive year where we're going to get games left and right.
Right.
It could change because of scheduling or whatever the case is. But if we go off of the assumption that they're going to announce games in 2021 that we don't even know about, that it's going to release that same year, right? We're going to have all these delayed games from 2020 landing in 2021. It just, to me, gives me the impression that this year has so much potential. Shin Megami Tensei, No More Heroes, Zelda, possibly any new game from their studios, No More Heroes, all releasing within the same time span.
Monster Hunter Rise. I am so excited for this game.
Hunter, that's another one. Monster Hunter Stories.
That's another one.
Yeah.
That's another. There's so much that we know is releasing in 2021, let alone the games we don't know about. And these, mind you, most of these are from games that should have been out already.
Maybe that 2D Metroid game that was rumored was one of those games delayed.
Maybe. It's all possible. So it's just the potential of 2021 is massive, I think. It's possible we can get a game way more. Like, I think 2020 was as slow as it was because of the situation that no one saw coming in the world, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But 2021, we're seeing studios like Sakurai's Smash Studio being a thing again. He's back in the studio. We're seeing games delayed into that year. These studios are probably catching up, maybe other than retro studios like Brandon mentioned, but for the most part, I think we might see a really good 2021. 2020 might be the year that was mostly a drought, but I think that's because everything was pushed into the year after. And unless they start delaying games in 2021, to delay into the next year, if they don't do that, the amount of games coming out is going to be just ridiculous.
Yeah. I'll also say that two things. One, I'm a big believer in the concept of the calm before the storm. This would be the calm. But also two, man, I forgot two, and two is more important. Damn it. Two is more important. Damn it.
I have an idea that maybe you were going off of.
Maybe.
We do see a pattern that it seems every other year is a bigger year for the Switch, and then they have like a kind of slower year, and then they have another really big year. So this year did line up to be one of the slower years already before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So 2021 might have already meant to be a much bigger year than this year anyways.
Right. Thank you, Brandon. That wasn't what I was thinking, but you got me on the right track again. So, basically what I was going to say was that 2019, if for some people who are debating if Nintendo would have such a stacked year, 2019, there was like that 6-month window where there were several Nintendo published games all there. Like there was multiple coming out within a particular month. Take, for example, September, we had Dragon Quest XI's. Yes, I understand it's a third-party game, but Nintendo published that. They offered funds for that. It was a big deal. They've been working on it for a very long time. That came out within a couple weeks of Link's Awakening Remake. And there was a whole bunch of other big games that came out around then as well. Fire Emblem Three Houses, Luigi's Mansion, Astral Chain, Pokemon Sword and Shield. They were all within a few months of each other. And anyway, the point is Link's Awakening and Dragon Quest XI came out to support the Switch Lite. And then we go back to 2017, that was a huge year. That's when the Switch actually came out. If 2021's a big year, I think there is kind of like that pattern there where a lot of big games come out. It's part that is to support a new piece of hardware. And it's not just with the Switch. If you go back to the beginning of 2015, we actually saw the new 3DS XL come out, and that was launched alongside both Majora's Mask 3D and Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. So there is like a pattern here of off year, big year, revision coming out, lots of big games. It is sort of lining up together. And actually, Bloomberg, a part of the report, is not just the system itself, but also a lot of games to come out to support it as well. So it's also kind of like a puzzle where all of these things are sort of making sense. Like it kind of seems like it's coming together, right? So I mean, we agree. Like we were talking about for all, 2021 is going to be a big year. Is it going to be as big as 2017? That's debatable, but it's like almost certainly going to be bigger than 2020. I mean, we just kind of going back to the games that came out this year. There was the Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which is a Wii U enhanced port. There was the board game compilation.
51 Worldwide Classics.
51 Worldwide Classics. Animal Crossing New Horizons was actually delayed into this year, but that's an internally developed Nintendo game. Big brand new game. Huge. Obviously, it's one of the best-selling games of all time now. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Awesome game, but it's a remaster of an old game. Paper Mario The Origami King is an internally developed game. But to close out the year, they had 3D All-Stars, which was made by a small team in Europe. Just 3 old Mario games. Pikmin 3 Deluxe, a Wii U port. And then Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which is a cool third-party collaboration with Nintendo. But that's what it is. It's a collaboration with a third-party company. It's not developed internally. It's made by Koei Tecmo. Point is, save for Paper Mario and Animal Crossing, there were no internally developed big projects for 2020. And as we talked about earlier, a lot of the big teams came out with games in 2017. It's all sort of lining up for a huge potential 2021.
Yeah, I have to agree with it.
Stars are aligning. It's that meme. Oh, it's all come together.
Yeah.
Pieces are falling into place.
Yeah. And some people are kind of bringing up anniversaries in the comments, actually. Taker610, will the Zelda 35th make the Mario 35th look like a joke? Big hopes for Zelda. I think even if they don't do any Zelda anniversary, if they just do Breath of the Wild 2 and they put 35 like on the title, that's already better than Mario 1 because it's a brand new ground up Zelda game as opposed to what we got for Mario, which wasn't any ground up Mario stuff. It was just a lot of like little cool things, but nothing. It wasn't a Mario Odyssey 2, you know? So there's that. Birdman Anatomy, and don't forget about Pokemon's 25th anniversary. It officially starts December 31st with a collaboration with the International Space Station. You've brought that up to me a couple times. True. I mean, Pokemon's 25th anniversary is 2021. They celebrate their anniversary like literally every year, so they're gonna celebrate the 25th one as well. Pokemon Days in February. Probably a remake of some sort is coming out in 2021, so that's another thing that adds more to the excitement for 2021. A lot of cool stuff for sure.
We got Metroid's 35th anniversary too.
Right, which just kind of it's this big rabbit hole of speculation with me because it all kind of pieces together, man. Because you have the Samus and Fortnite thing, you have the 2D Metroid that may have been delayed into 2021, you have the Prime trilogy that's been rumored since like 2018. There's so much stuff there, and then there's the Metroid 35th anniversary and Prime 4 we know is coming, and Retro Studios is working on for quite some time. Like all these things sort of come together. Like I don't know. I'm just gonna say where there's smoke, there's fire. Like something maybe, you know. They don't have to they're not gonna push Metroid 35th anniversary like the same way they did for Mario, or what they'll do for Zelda. But could they use it as an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about Metroid and maybe push one particular game that's coming out around that time? That I think will happen, and that may be Prime Trilogy, or 2D Metroid, one or the other.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
Yep. Well, is there anything else you guys wanna talk about before we call it a night?
I'm just excited to see what happens next year. I'm just curious, you know, if the revision comes out, what it will be, and what games we're gonna see. So I'm just kind of in a wait and see, Nintendo, it's your move kind of position here.
I just realized this is the last week. This is the second to last week before the end of the year. So this is the second to last podcast. So just spoiler, the final podcast of the year will be like a 2021 predictions discussion, but kind of the things we touched on now are sort of kind of like what we're focusing on more specifically for next week. But this is it. This is the end. I don't know who I was speaking to about it a few days ago. I think it was during the Super Mario World Direct. But basically, we were having some conversation about how there may not be any more like Nintendo announcements until next year because they have to go on holiday. I think this week that just happened was fairly packed, provided given that there's not any really big games to talk about right now. They had talked about Sephiroth and Smash Brothers. They released a Bravely Default 2 demo. They had an Indie World presentation to show off more indie games. They announced Among Us as well, which is pretty cool, actually. We didn't really talk about that. And then, of course, we had the Super Mario World Direct. Like, that's a lot to do all in 1 week, you know? But they did all that in 1 week, which is pretty cool. And I think that was kind of like the end of Nintendo's, like, sort of, like, announcements for 2020. And I think they're going to go on break soon because Christmas is literally a handful of days away. They're going to go on holiday, and we won't be seeing any major announcements from Nintendo until the beginning of January.
Yeah,
I think that's fair, yeah. Because they have to stop eventually. They're not going to have announcements until the very end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's it. The year is over, pretty much.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say about 2021 is don't be surprised if they announce a game and it comes out in a month or like less than a month, because they seem to love doing that. So along with all the other games that we know that already makes 2021 look huge, there's most likely some secret games we don't know about that's coming out.
You wanna know what my prediction is for that? Skyward Sword HD. I think Skyward Sword HD is coming out this March.
I welcome it.
Yeah, because Zelda's 35th anniversary is in February. They might have a presentation around then, announce some Zelda stuff. And as I mentioned earlier, when the Switch Lite was released, in September 2019, that came out alongside a big third-party game in Dragon Quest XI's and the Link's Awakening remake. But then we go back to 2015, February, new 3DS XL came out. What came out to support it? Another Zelda remake in Majora's Mask 3D, and a big third-party game in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Just saying, March has Monster Hunter Rise. Maybe we get a Switch revision, maybe we don't, but I feel like maybe. And it also kind of lines up with Zelda's anniversary to have maybe a Skyward Sword HD, and it kind of supports your thinking that we may get an announcement for a game to come out like a month or two later really soon.
Yeah. And I think that's all feasible, and knowing that that's all possible makes 2021 even more exciting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Even if we don't get any announcements, like we have 3 pretty cool games coming out by March, which is Bravely Default 2, 3D World Deluxe plus Bowser's Fury, and Monster Hunter Rise. Like that's some cool stuff right there. But there's other things, so don't worry. They're gonna make announcements. I just hope it's not a situation where they have us believe, oh man, there's gonna be a Nintendo Direct any week now for January. Any week now for February. Any week now for March. But April, if there's no more games, they have to announce something now. Let's wait 3 more months. Like, that's what they did this year, but this year was a unique situation, so we'll see what happens. Yep. Well, I mean, that's pretty much it, guys. You guys have any closing thoughts?
I thought that was our closing thoughts.
Okay, do you have any extra closing thoughts?
No.
Good.
Other than Breath of the Wild 2, the game I want the most is Shin Megami Tensei 5 and No More Heroes 3. That's all you're getting from me.
That's good.
I'm really excited for Ratchet and Clank, but that has nothing to do with Nintendo.
Aw, Saturn Tubes. I'm not ignoring Nocturne, I'm just not talking about it. Shin Megami Tensei 3, the HD remaster, is also coming out next year, and that is something to be excited about as well.
If it means anything, Saturn Tubes, I love Shin Megami Tensei. I played the original Nocturne, and I'm buying it also. So don't you worry, I'll support it too.
Yeah. Well, that's all for now, guys. Make sure to check out both their channels. They are linked in the description below. Have a good night. There will be content coming out throughout the week. I don't plan on taking a holiday break. I think I'm actually going to spend Christmas Day alone. I didn't mean to end things on a sour note. I'll be fine.
I'll be with family.
Hey man, if you need to play Among Us with somebody, hit me up.
Yeah, let's do that. Maybe we'll do a stream or something. That might be fun. Yeah, maybe we'll have a holiday stream on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Spend it with the peeps. All right, guys.
Nice.
Take care. See you later.
Bye, guys.